And we are live with today's pre-show of our SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show. We're about 10 minutes from getting started. Having a hard time hearing myself. This is why we do a pre-show, so I can check all my connections. It's this one that is causing me the biggest problems today. Oh, thanks for being here, everyone. Hello, chat room. Hope everyone's doing well. I guess I could put up our first slide, couldn't I? I could probably do that if I was all ready to go. My microphone, my headset is now wrapped around my chair. I will never hear myself again. I've pretty much decided at this point. There we go. Okay. End of the cable. Now we're in good shape. This is exactly why we do a pre-show, by the way. Are my Cylons going? You can't even see them though. They're down here. I need to adjust my camera a little better. It's a little tight. It's a little tight on us right here. It's very, very narrow, the scale. I'll have to work on that for the next live stream. But it is recording, so that's good. That's recording. Our stream is going. We're at 3%, which is where we like to be. You can see we're streaming and sending YouTube a total data rate of approximately 5.92 megabits per second. Little plus and minus there. So we got a lot to do. Folks in the chat room, thanks for being here. Thanks for checking in. A lot of folks are filing in at this point. We have brand new questions for you today, so make yourself comfortable. We've got a lot to go through. We'll figure out the details. Is it better to finish my 701 playlist first to attend this study session? It will probably make more of the questions familiar to you. I think you will learn something as we go through the questions anyway, but you probably won't know the answers to some of them. You'll probably figure it out after we do the question, which I don't know is necessarily a bad thing, but it's sort of backwards to how you would normally do it, yes. But that's okay. There's also another almost since the beginning of the year, since January. So you got another 4 or 5 live streams you can always go back and watch later. So that's something. You got that going on. All right. We are trying to get things ready to go. I have a lot of new content today. There's been a lot of work going on here behind the scenes, not necessarily with the Security Plus, but certainly with Network Plus right now. Just super busy. There's a lot going on, and which is exciting. It's always good to have something to do, which never seems to be a problem for me. There's always something to do. All right, let's check cameras. Cameras are looking pretty good. We've got, that's not a camera. All right. Now, why did that show up on 6? Oh, because it is. That's my streaming box. Okay. Trying to figure it out. Trying to make it all make sense. Sometimes there's just one extra button and you're wondering, what does that button do? What does that one do? Let's push it and see. How bad can it be? Well, sometimes it could be very bad. You do have to be very careful when you're pushing those buttons of which one comes first, which one comes next, etc. All right. We got about just over 6 minutes until we get started. So we got a lot going on. We'll get the live stream going. This is the pre-show part. Let's get this one going. That looks good. All the cameras are now up and running. You can see all of them right here. Camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4. They are the head cam because it's my head. There's the bird cam as seen from the perspective of a bird. It's not hard to follow, people. There's the Mac Studio, which is the primary device that I use. This is my laptop here. That's it's also a MacBook Pro. Although technically we could really run that on almost anything, although it is running Keynote at the moment. So it does have to be Mac OS. So that's the deal. Which is easier, 601 or 701? Well, I guess that would depend on what you've been doing with these. Now, if you're just starting your studies right now, you're probably going to go to 701 just because there's only a couple months left on the 601, right? I guess if you crammed really hard, you could get through the 601, but why would you do that to yourself? I would really recommend taking the 701 at this point, unless you have already been studying for the 601, and then obviously finish your 601 studies and go take the 601 exam and just be done with it. Get it out of the way. I think the difficulty level of both exams is very similar. I don't think the exam itself is written in a way that it's pretty much the same thing. But one of the things that I find different between those is that the 701, the total amount of exam content in the 701 is smaller. So you may find the 701 is easy to study for, but when you finally go into the exam, I find the exam difficulty level is approximately the same between both. Does that make sense? I think it does. So there's of course nuances with everything. I can't just pick one and go, oh, that one's easier. Oh, that one's easier. You can't, I have no idea what to do for that. If you're already certified 601, at what point do you need to certify a new version? You are not certified 601. You're certified Security Plus. Doesn't matter which exam you take, you're certified Security Plus. In fact, now that you're certified Security Plus, nobody cares what exam you took. That's the important part. So you are Security Plus certified. You don't certify a new version. You have a 3-year renewal period. So you need to renew sometime within the first 3 years of earning that certification. That is all you have to worry about. And it doesn't matter. They could come up with a new exam version every day. Tomorrow is the 801. The day after that's 901. The day after that's 1001. The day after that's 1101. They could do that every day if they wanted to. But if you are already certified, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to you. You are good to go. That's the great part of this. How do you know if you're ready for the exam? Oh, we're going to talk about that today. You will hear all about it in this first hour, maybe a little bit in the second hour too. So we will absolutely touch on that, as we always do, which is the good part. I think there is plenty to go through here. Let's check our audio. We've got a few minutes left, 3 minutes until we get started. Once upon a time, did I teach Linux? I did not. I did have some Linux videos out there. There was an effort to start those, and I decided that I did not want to do Linux. So there you go. Will this class be posted online later on? It's available immediately afterwards to watch on YouTube, since this is a YouTube stream. As soon as I push the stop button, it takes a couple minutes, and then it's available for watch and replay right then. Makes it really easy. Makes it easy for me. I don't know if it's easy for you, but it's super easy for me because I just push the stop button and I don't have to worry about it, which is exactly what I'm shooting for when it comes to ease of use. Let's put up our little yellow circle thing. We got that? There it is. Now we got a little yellow circle thing. I should probably call the app Little Yellow Circle Thing, because that's all I do with this app is show a little yellow circle on the screen. How long is this live? Well, that's a fine question. Ideally, it'll be an hour, and the first hour is Q&A. I ask you the questions. And in the second hour, we call our after show, which technically sometimes is longer than the original show. The second hour is when you ask me questions. And you can ask questions right now. Oh, I didn't put up the picture. Where is everybody? Where are you joining from? There it is. Now you can punch it in there. Put your digital, the digital button there, your pin, your digital pin into the pin cushion, and we can see where you are. How many hours does it take you to prepare a series for the 701? I'm not sure if you're asking other people for studying or if you're asking me how long it takes to build a video course, which are two very different questions. I would argue it took longer to build the video course than it takes anybody to study for this thing. So it takes months. It takes months of time sitting here in this dark room. It's usually not this dark, of me building content, creating the videos, editing the videos, posting the videos, creating the course notes, creating the practice exams. That's what we do. So that's a lot. Should we use this video study the 701? Do we still study 601? You study whichever one you're taking, you study the right course for that. So if you're taking the 701 exam, you study a 701 course. If you're taking the 601 exam, you study the 601 course, and do not combine those. Do not use one to study for the other. You have to make sure you're studying from the right materials. So it's pretty important. All right, we are at the top of the hour. Let's see if we can get Keynote up and running. We got a green light. Look at that. Let's see if the green light works. It sure does. Everything here looks good. We've got our info up. It's time for a live stream, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2024 Professor Messer SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and we get to see how well you know this content written specifically for the SY0-701 exam. We have a lot to go through today. We will start with a description of what we're doing today. So if you are here live, we would love it if you could open up a new browser window and visit this URL. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and that way there will be a question waiting for you. In fact, I should get that question on your screen right now. The question that you are going to find is one from a previous study group. We call it our rewind question. So we can see if you're able to use that link, get into it, and be able to answer these questions. This question is one that we will put up and you will be able to answer. One thing to keep in mind, though, you need to answer using the link on your screen. Please do not answer in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. The question asks, a security administrator has identified all possible points of unauthorized entry on a newly built web server. Which of the following would describe this list? Would it be, there it is, responsibility matrix, platform diversity, journaling, input validation, and attack surface? It's got to be one of those. The question again asks, a security administrator has identified all possible points of unauthorized entry on a newly built web server. Which of the following would describe this list? Is it responsibility matrix, platform diversity, journaling, input validation, or attack surface? And again, if you know the answer, don't put in the answer in the chat room. You want to use that link in front of you. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Well, we have a lot to go through today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be back to that question in just a moment. But in the meantime, let me remind you that we have so many study materials available. Of course, our entire Security Plus course is available for you to watch online for free. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's nothing between you and earning this information and figuring out how to use that to pass your Security Plus exam. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed already, we would love it if you would go out and subscribe to our channel. That's where we'll be posting all of our new videos for pretty much everything. We also have a weekly Security Plus pop quiz question that we post on the service formerly known as Twitter. You can find that at professormesser.com/Twitter. And we post the same question, except we put a pretty picture with it over on Instagram. Go to professormesser.com/Instagram. We're trying to spread around our social media access, so wherever you are, hopefully we're there as well. Now, there are currently 2 different exams available to take that can earn you a Security Plus certification. You only need to pass one of these, but there are differences in the 2. Let's talk about these. The first one is the one that's been around since November of 2020. It is referred to as the SY0-601. The 601 exam is going to be retired on July 31st of this year. That means in a couple of months, this exam will be gone. You'll never be able to take this exam ever again. It goes away forever. That means that if you are starting your studies today, this may not be the exam you want to take because you don't have much time to complete your studies before the entire exam disappears. But hang on, we have a solution for that. We'll get to that in just a moment. This is a single exam. It's 90 minutes in length. They can give you a maximum of 90 questions. There might be fewer questions than that on the exam. The passing score you're hoping to get is on a scale from 100 to 900, and you're hoping the final score comes out as a 750. That's the passing score. The exam itself consists of both multiple choice-based questions and performance-based questions. We'll talk about performance-based questions in a moment as well, so keep that in mind. But it is exactly the same format as a newer version of the Security Plus exam called the SY0-701. This is a newer exam version. This is something that CompTIA normally does about every 3 to 3.5 years. They roll out a new version of the exam. This newest version was released in November of 2023, so it's only about 6 months old. Less than that, really. So there is a relatively new set of folks that are becoming certified on this latest version of the Security Plus exam, and we expect this exam will be around until somewhere around May of 2027. So there is the difference between these two, is that one is being phased out, one is a brand new exam, and we're in this middle period where you can transition. You can decide whether you want to take the 601 exam, so that those of you who've been studying for months to take the 601 exam have plenty of time to finish up their studies. But if you're starting your studies brand new, you probably at this point want to take or study towards the 701 exam, because there's only so much time left. It's only about 2 months left to pass that 601. Instead of putting yourself into such a very tight position of study where you have to complete all of your studies before the end of July, it probably would fit your calendar and your schedule a lot better if you study for the 701 exam, which obviously is not going away until 2027. You'll notice, though, these two exams, exactly the same format. Single exam, 90 minutes long, maximum of 90 questions. You need a 750 as the passing score, which is identical to the 601 exam. And of course, this is on a scale from 100 to 900. Same format, though, as the 601 when you have different differences between all of these. Now, the big difference, of course, is which exam do you take? Now, it doesn't matter which exam you take, the 601 or the 701, the end result is identical. You earn your Security Plus certification. There's no versioning of the cert. So if you take the 601 exam, you are Security Plus certified. If you take the 701 exam, you are also Security Plus certified. And more importantly, you are exactly the same credentialed Security Plus certified. There's no difference between those two. One thing that is very different between the two is the content. These are very different exams in what is offered. So make sure, although they're both about security and very broadly, a lot of these topics are similar between both exams, there are actually quite a bit of differences in the exam objectives between one and the other. So I would tell you, and I always tell you, never, never, never study for one exam by using materials from a different exam. It's a bad idea, and especially with this series, it's a super bad idea. You'll find out more about that probably in the after show. If you want more information on that, we can certainly talk about it. And if you're starting right now, you should probably study towards the 701 version of this, since the 601 will indeed retire on the 31st of July. There are lots of study materials on the Professor Messer website for both the 601 and the 701. We make a new series of videos for each one of these, and all of our videos, as I mentioned, are absolutely free for you to watch. I do have downloadable versions of this content. A lot of people like those. I also have course notes and practice exams and other study materials that might help you. I've bundled all of these together into one single study pack called our Success Bundle. You can learn more about that by visiting our website. Go to professormesser.com/701SB, or you can check the menus at the top of the website or in the hamburger menu if you're on your mobile device, and you can find the 701 release options there. And of course, you have 601 options there. If you're studying for your 601, there is a corresponding 601 Success Bundle. Just depends on which one you'll be studying. I would expect probably in the next 30 to 45 days, we'll probably start phasing out a lot of those study materials for purchase, because it really doesn't make sense for you to purchase these a month before the exam retires. You just don't have enough time to study for it. So it's one of those challenges. We'll figure out more of those as we get closer. We'll talk maybe next month about what we figure out with that one. Also let you know that we have podcasts available of this study group. I create a audio version of this podcast that I post at professormesser.com/podcast. It's an easy way to listen in if you're in your car, you're working out, you don't need that video. It's exactly the same audio content, but it is in this podcast distribution format. Also, if you're on one of your favorite streaming services, you may find our podcast there as well. For example, if you're on Spotify, simply search for Professor Messer and you'll find all of our study group podcasts available to stream on that service. And if you don't find our live stream audio on your favorite service, let me know, and I'll work on getting that on those services too. Also, there is a video replay of this available immediately afterwards on YouTube. I just push the stop button and they automatically post it online. Super easy for me to do. But one of the things that's a bit of a challenge is there's a lot of content inside of this video. So my marketing manager, Lori, you'll notice about a day later, has added information into the YouTube video description, specifically timestamps of everything that we do in this live stream. So Lori's watching the replay. Hey, Lori. She's going through all of this probably at 2x speed, listening to the whole thing and documenting every single one of these timestamps for you so you can find exactly what you're looking for and find it very, very quickly. Thank you, Lori, for doing that. I know that it helps a lot of folks find exactly what they are looking for. When we're not in this live stream, you can find us over on our Discord. It's a great place to not only talk to me, but also a lot of other people who are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, Security Plus, and other certifications. You can open up your own study session and study with others just by clicking a button, and you're in control and have complete access to managing that study hall that you're creating. And then there are other people that are studying that can ask questions and answer questions on the community that we built there. Go to professormesser.com/Discord if you'd like to join us. It's a great place to work through your studies and talk with other people that are going through similar challenges with answering some of these questions. Now, eventually, you're going to need to take your Security Plus exam. Now, you could, of course, go to the CompTIA website and pay full price to take that exam, or you could pay a discounted price to take the exam. And who wouldn't want some extra dollars in their pocket? This is for folks that are in the U.S., Canada, or U.S. territories. We have discounted vouchers on our website. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need an extension built into your browser. You just simply need to visit professormesser.com/vouchers, and the vouchers are already discounted. What could be easier? You don't even have to ask me for a discount. I just put them out there already discounted. So find out which exam you're planning to take, save a little bit of money. You can go to professormesser.com/vouchers. I also give you a little bit extra, something you can't get anywhere else. So if you buy the voucher at Professor Messer, you'll be able to get my Exam Hacks ebook. Go to have a look at that. That's something that has a list of tips and tricks that I've created after taking all of these industry certification exams for so many years. Tips and tricks that can not only help you with the study process, but I have tips and tricks that can help you in the exam itself. And perhaps it maybe gets you a little bit of extra points there on the exam that you might not have gotten before. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which is a security administrator has identified all possible points of unauthorized entry on a newly built web server. Which of the following would describe this list? Is it a responsibility matrix, platform diversity, journaling, input validation, or attack surface? Let's find out what you chose for this one. We can see that almost 80% of you may have remembered this question from a previous study group because you chose attack surface. And that is the right answer for this particular question. Knowing the attack surface can help you understand how many different ways there might be for someone to gain access to a particular resource on your network. So this could be a number of different things to consider, not just do you have a strong password, but you also have to make sure that all of your software is updated, that any services that are running don't have any misconfigurations, that someone didn't type in the wrong permission settings and inadvertently allow everyone access without any type of authentication. These things happen. So understanding the attack surface can be very, very useful for understanding where to put your security. And that's why this is the question we asked about from the very beginning here. And indeed, 80% of you got this one absolutely right. Attack surface is the answer that we were looking for. Well done on that one. Responsibility matrix is something that's usually provided by a cloud service provider to tell you what responsibility is yours and what responsibility is theirs. Platform diversity means that you have more than just one type of platform. You're running Linux, you're running Windows, you're running Mac OS. That means if there's a worm that affects Windows, your Mac OS and your Linux devices will still be up and running. That's the whole point of having that level of diversity between all of those different platforms. Journaling describes a way to prevent corruption of databases by writing information off to a temporary area. That means that if you lose power right in the middle of that, you haven't lost your entire database. You've not corrupted everything, but you might have lost that last transaction that was added to the cache. And then you have input validation. That's a way that we're able to confirm that the information that somebody inputted was really what our application was expecting. In this case, when we're trying to find unauthorized entry, the answer here is indeed attack surface. That's exactly what we were looking for. And you folks were right on top of that one. You knew the answer to that one pretty solid. It wasn't fooling anyone, and you got that one absolutely right. Let's now go to brand new questions, things you have not seen before in our study group. And I do have a brand new question for you. This is a performance-based question. Performance-based questions are questions that are at the very beginning of your exam. You will get a handful of performance-based questions on your Security Plus exam. And these are questions that effectively are everything but multiple choice. They could be fill in the blank. They could be a matching question. It might be a drag and drop question. They may be asking you to put things in a particular order. There could be a lot of things that can happen at the beginning of this exam with these performance-based questions. So I have for you today what sort of is a matching question / fill in the blank question that is a performance-based question. This one is one that asks data in transit, data in use, or data at rest. So I want you to choose which one of these things it is for these 6 different scenarios. I have 6 different situations here, and I want you to tell me which ones of these are data in transit, data in use, or data at rest. So let's start with the first one, and it asks or says, a point of sale terminal validates a credit card expiration date. Is that data in use, data in transit, data in use, or data at rest? We got all 3 of those to choose from. The second on our list is a cloud app transaction sends data to multiple data centers. Is that data in transit, data in use, or data at rest? The third is all backup tapes are stored at a secure facility. Is that data in transit, data in use, data at rest? Fourth is a database server stores all customer data in a RAID array. An email's digital signature is validated when the message is opened, and encrypted data is sent over a VPN between remote sites. Now, if you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. You'll be able to find that right away. That should be a good one to go through to figure out the details. Let's see if you are familiar with this one. Let's see if you're familiar enough with these 3 things to be able to categorize them properly. You can put in your answers by going to professormesser.com/QA and locking in what you think the answer might be. Remember what you put in for these answers. It doesn't show you this on the answer page. So you need to remember which ones you chose for these 6 scenarios. So data in transit, data in use, or data at rest. And again, they are a point of sale terminal validates a credit card expiration date. A cloud app transaction sends data to multiple data centers. All backup tapes are stored at a secure facility. A database server stores all customer data in a RAID array. An email's digital signature is validated when the message is opened. And encrypted data is sent over a VPN between remote sites. See how you do with this one. If you know the answer, lock them in at professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll see which ones they are. You are putting this in as a reference to yourself. I will not be looking at the answers to this one because it is a fill-in-the-blank question, so to speak. So feel free to put it in whatever format you would like. If we have data in transit, use, and rest, you could even use T, U, and R if you wanted to, just to mark down what you think the answer is for these. For the first one, is it a T, U, or R? For the second one, is it T, U, R? We can make this very, very simple to be able to figure out the details of this. Hopefully, you are familiar a little bit with some of these technologies, and you'll be able to answer this one by going to professormesser.com/QA. This This is one of the common things you see with performance-based questions, and it's something that I like to tell people who are very concerned about these initial performance-based questions on the exam. If you know the material, you know what's in the exam objectives, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. This could have been a fill in the blank on your exam. It could be a pull down. It could be a matching. It could be a drag and drop. You could present this question in a lot of different ways. But the important thing is that you know what data in transit, data in use, and data at rest are, and you know in what scenarios those are used. Then it doesn't matter how they ask the question. And I think that's a lot. People get very concerned about these performance-based questions. They get a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry over it. And I try to tell folks, don't worry about it, because they ask you multiple choice-based questions. You don't worry about those. Just another way to ask questions. So here's a different way to ask the same question. Effectively, this could have been a multiple choice-based question. I could have asked you, a point-of-sale terminal validates a credit card expiration date. Is that data in transit, data in use, or data at rest? Answer. I mean, that's exactly the same thing as a multiple choice question. I would argue that every performance-based question is pretty much a multiple choice-based question. We'll have to see if that's really the case. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's step through each one of these and figure out what we think the answer is for all of them. So we'll start with the first one. For data in transit, data in use, or data at rest. Let's start with a point of sale terminal validates a credit card expiration date. This is something that's done when you slide your card into a reader or somebody types in all of that information and you hit submit. Something has to validate the number, they have to validate the expiration date, and they have to validate the CVV or the verification code associated with that if they're grabbing that, if that's something that's required. And that means that that data has to be in the memory of a system to be able to do something with that. So I think that's the important part, is knowing where this happens, because we can easily go back and figure out that that is indeed in use. We have this in active memory. That means we are using it. After all, the CPUs of our system can't do any type of transactional analysis. It can't see any of the data. It can't perform any type of calculations on that data unless the data is in memory. And when data is in memory, we refer to that as data in use. Second on our list is a cloud app transaction sends data to multiple data centers. And that's another good example of understanding that data is being sent across the network. And when data is actively traversing a network link, we refer to that as data in transit. It is transiting the network. Just as you would get on public transit, where you hop on the bus, you hop on the subway, and it takes you somewhere else. It's the same thing with data. Data hops on the network, and that frame takes it somewhere else on the network. That's the best I got, folks. In transit is that one, because we are sending that data to a different site. As it is going across the network, it is indeed in transit. Next on our list is all backup tapes are stored at a secure facility. Well, it's not currently in the CPU of a system because it's on a backup tape stored somewhere on a shelf. We have also it's not currently going across the network, so we know that's not the issue. That means that it would be data at rest. It's resting. It's the Westinghouse. The data at rest is almost an easy one. If it's on a storage device and it's just sitting there, then it's data at rest. And that's pretty much what's happening at our secure facility. We've sent a tape, they put it on a shelf, and that tape sits there until we need it. That is data at rest. Next on our list is a database server stores all customer data in a RAID array. That's another good place to be. The RAID array is the data is just sitting on the storage drive. It's identical to the scenario we were just describing where the data was just hanging out. It's just sitting there. And in that particular circumstance, that's a pretty good one because it's just sitting on the array. It's not doing anything but being stored on a couple drives or more. Data at rest is a database server storing all customer data in a RAID array. Next on our list is an email's digital signature is validated when a message is opened. Now, if you've ever gone through the process of validating a digital signature, you know that it has to grab a public key. There has to be some decryption involved. You have to now hash some additional information. You have to compare hashes. There's a lot going on there with those. And when you run into that scenario, you can easily determine you have to do that in memory. You have to bring all that data into memory to perform all of those. And when that happens, you are using the data, which means it's data in use. And then our last one is encrypted data is sent over a VPN between remote sites. Again, here's a case where we are sending information from one site to another, from one machine to another. This data is going across the network. And that is the important part, because if data goes across the network, it is data in transit. That is the answer. So now we have really stepped through a number of different scenarios where we have had to have data that is in transit, in use, and at rest. And hopefully if you weren't familiar with these concepts before, you are certainly familiar with these concepts now. And if someone asks you about the states of data, the state of data in transit, the state of data in use, the state of data at rest, you will be in fine shape for these particular topics if you happen to get them on your exam. That was our performance-based question of the month. It looks like a number of you did really, really well with this one. This is a good example of how figuring out the nuances on how these topics are used in a practical sense is an important part of this exam. You will see that as a very common theme as we not only go through our question today, but the questions that you get on your exam. That's a pretty important thing to consider. There is a video on these if you need more information, more clarification, you have questions about when one would be used over another. That video is in my SY0-701 series in section 3.3, and the name of the video is States of Data. Well, let's do another question. We're back to multiple choice-based questions. This multiple choice-based question asks, a company would like to ensure all new software installations use unmodified code from the developers. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be code signing, input validation, sandboxing, static code analysis, or secure cookies? I have a few to choose from there. A company would like to ensure all new software installations use unmodified code from the developers. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it code signing, input validation, sandboxing, static code analysis, or secure cookies? Do you think you know the answer? No answers in the chat room. You want to follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you know. Maybe some of you are software developers. Maybe you know the answer to this one. If you're software developers, you're probably in the wrong place. But we do have some check-in every once in a while. Everyone is welcome. So we'll take even the developers in our live streams. Most of you, though, will probably not be developing applications. That's because you're an IT person and not a computer science person or an application development person. So this is a very good example of understanding the details of this. We got the app developers in the chat room checking in. Thank you, Joseph, for raising your hand up and saying you're an app dev. Everybody's supposed to go, hi, Joseph. I don't think that's exactly what he meant when he said I'm an app dev. But we do feel for you. Anyway, we're very, very happy that you're writing the apps, because that means that I'm not. I'm a very bad application developer. I'm glad there's smarter people than me working on that, because I would probably make some pretty bad apps to be able to do that. Now, thank you, chat room, for making Joseph feel welcome. That was kind of nice. Let's see how Joseph did with this question. The question asked, a company would like to ensure all new software installations use unmodified code from the developers, from Joseph. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would Joseph use code signing, input validation, sandboxing, static code analysis, or secure cookies? And let's see what everybody thinks the right answer is on this one. We see that 75% of us say the answer is code signing. That's a pretty strong majority. We also have static code analysis at 13%, so double digits for those doing static code analysis. We have 6% that say input validation, 4% that say sandboxing, and less than 1% say secure cookies. Well, if you are someone who is an application developer and you're working on an application like this and you're deploying the app and you want to be sure that the people that receive this application are receiving exactly the same binary that you are sending to them, that nobody has changed anything anywhere in between, then you need to use code signing. Code signing is effectively a digital signature that we are applying to this executable or to this code that we are submitting. This is one that really allows the developer to add an extra level of security around their app. And of course, this extra level of security is one that we can use on our side as well to be able to ensure that the application that we're installing is the one that was originally sent to us. In fact, you've probably seen this whenever you've installed a new application in Windows. It's even mentioned to you, this application says it's from this developer. Is this really the case? And then you get to decide whether that is indeed the proper signature. In fact, we often don't even see these. Windows is very good at even hiding some of this, because if it's from Microsoft, if it's from Adobe, if it's from one of these trusted developments or developers, then we'll just naturally, automatically trust that particular development because we were able to do the check the code, check the signature on the code, make sure that it really did come from that particular development house, whether it's Microsoft or Adobe or anyone else that's creating that application. So indeed, for those of you that have been studying on your exams for digital signatures, you know this provides not just a way to validate the information that is being provided to us, so we know that the code that we got was exactly binarily exactly the code that was sent by the developer, but there's non-repudiation. We can not only know that it's the same code, we know that it came from Microsoft, and everybody can see that it came from Microsoft, and everybody can validate that. We refer to that as non-repudiation, and that is another great opportunity to take advantage of digital signatures as we use this code signing. And indeed, that is what most of you chose. 75% of you said, yep, it's code signing. That's exactly what we would use to be able to do that. But what about these other answers? Static code analysis is something that we would do to go through our source code to be able to find any type of security concerns built into the code itself. Now, obviously, as many of us are simply installing executables on our machine, we never see the source code unless we're downloading source code to do something else. One of the things that I always run into, and I think that's part of a problem, is being able to read through source code can be very difficult to find security vulnerabilities. And that's why there are so static code analyzers that will read through it for us. I guess these days we're calling it AI. From what we've all seen, though, there's a lot of A and there's not a lot of I. So static code analysis is probably a better term to use for that one. Input validation is something that developers use to check the input from the user and make sure that the input matches what is expected. And probably more importantly, is able to filter out things that are not expected. But that wasn't the question we were asking about validating a new software installation and making sure the code was not modified. That would not be what input validation does. Sandboxing got 4% of the code. Sandboxing is a very generic term that really describes running this software in a standalone system that we can look at, analyze, and make sure it works properly before putting this application into a production environment. And then lastly, we have secure cookies. Secure cookies, you have a lot of secure cookies on your machine. Don't know if you knew that, but there's plenty of secure cookies inside of your browser. And that is something used to be able to secure the data that we are temporarily storing when we visit a website. Has nothing to do with ensuring that software installations are using unmodified code. In this case, the only answer that makes sense is the top one. That would be code signing. 75% of you got that one right. Well done. But there's more questions coming. Let's do another one. This next question asks, a company's IT department uses Google Analytics to produce reports for the CEO on the performance of their in-house web servers. Which of the following would best describe Google Analytics? Would that be data owner, data retention, data plane, data processor, or data controller? What's probably the biggest challenge, I think, is that all of these are in the exam objectives. So these are all real things, but we have to kind of parse this out a little bit. Let's look at the question again. It asked, a company's IT department uses Google Analytics to produce reports for the CEO on the performance of their in-house web servers. Which of the following would best describe Google Analytics? Would that be data owner, data retention, data plane, data processor, or data controller? This question was not brought to you by Google Analytics, although it sounds like it, but I needed to provide some type of real world context to this question. So this is one of many different analytics tools that you could use to look at the performance of an in-house web server. I just happen to choose Google Analytics because I use a lot of Google Analytics. I'm very familiar with it. There's lots of choices out there to be able to do that, and you should find the analytics solution that works for you. Contact us at, no, this is not an advertisement. This is us trying to figure out, what is that then? Is it data owner, data retention, data plane, data processor, data controller? Oh, we got to figure this one out. See if you know the answer. Submit your answer on the link that you see here. Go to professormesser.com/QA. See if you happen to know where it is. This should be a good one to step through. All of these are good things to know. And it's one of the things I mentioned as you're going through your exam objectives, is that you really do need to be familiar with these terms and be able to describe these terms to somebody. So if you can go through every single one of those and tell somebody what those are, or maybe even better, what the differences are, that would be very, very valuable. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a company's IT department uses Google Analytics to produce reports for the CEO on the performance of their in-house web servers. Which of the following would best describe Google Analytics? Is that a data owner, data retention, data plane, data processor, or data controller? What did we choose? What do we think it is? Well, we got one that really everybody chose. 78% of you think the answer is data processor. Almost 10%, 9.48% say the answer is data controller. And then we have single digits, 5% for data plane, 4% for data owner, and 3% for data retention. Did I say data retention? I think I did. You know that that's what we were looking for. The responsibilities for data are an important part of the exam. You should be familiar with these. They are situations where you will need to look at every scenario and how you're using this data to really parse out who the data responsibilities, where they fall. And in the case of someone like a CEO, would be a data owner, for example. I put that one in here so we could really see the differences between someone who owns the data, and I would think in this case, the CEO or perhaps the web department might own the data, but somebody has to process all of this data that we are providing. So although our CEO might be the owner of the data, or the company might be the owner of the data, having the data itself doesn't give us any type of reports. We have to put that into some type of software or system to be able to parse through that data and provide us with some type of information on what it's able to provide. And those of you that chose data processor got that one absolutely right. That is what Google Analytics is doing. It's going through all of this data that we are providing, every bit of information that we have on people visiting a website, what they're clicking on, how often they're doing it, all goes into Google, and we can create a very big set of reports showing us how many people are visiting our site. What are they interested in? What things can we do to make sure that we're providing them with an easy way to gain access to what they need? A lot of great information in there. And indeed, data processor is exactly the one we were choosing or looking for here. 78% of you got that one right. And now we understand why data owner might not be the right answer here, because the data owner is simply the person who's responsible for the data, but not necessarily going through the data and providing any type of information or metrics from that data. We have other answers here. For example, data controller, 9% of you chose data controller. In this case, data controllers might be responsible for managing parts of the data, especially as it associated with a data plane. But in those cases, we aren't talking about the Google Analytics side of things actually processing the data. And then lastly, data retention is a set of policies that describes how much of this data we keep and for how long. Certain environments may require you to, for example, keep 7 years worth of emails. There's a good data retention policy. Other organizations don't have to retain any email. Every email can be thrown out, but they might have a rule that says that they have to retain financial data for a certain amount of time. So this will change and it will be different depending on the organization, depending on the rules and regulations for that organization, and depending on where you happen to be in the world. That is where you want to go to find out more about data processing, data owners, data planes, data controllers, and data retention. A lot going on there if you're working through the details. Hopefully that'll give you some familiarity with things that will be important to know for the exam itself. And I think if you're someone who's trying to parse through all of these crazy terms of data owner, data controller, and data processor, and it's all starting to blur together, and there's a lot of things you have to know about these terms that are on your exam, it might be useful to have everything rolled up into one single reference. And indeed, one of those does exist. It is my course notes. I have a lot of Security Plus videos out there. In fact, if you look at my 701 course, 121 videos, over 15 hours of content. That is a very good example of how there could be so much to go through that you might not have enough time to go through all of that. Well, I've created for you a single guide that has 96 pages that contains everything from every video. All of the text, all of the important graphics, all of the charts, all of the tables, they are in the course notes. It's a great way to summarize everything in one single view. Here's a PDF version of the course notes. I didn't put my course notes up on my desk. I have a physical version of the course notes too. Hold on. Got it right here, everybody. Oh, it's on the floor. Ah, stuff's falling. I knew it. See, there you go. There we go. See, now we got the course notes. Got my 701 course notes in front of me. They are exactly the same in the physical as the digital. So no difference between the two, but you'll notice everything's in here. There we go. We got the details, the graphs, the charts, the images, everything that's important to know. It's all in the course notes. It's an easy way to have everything consolidated into one single view. And I think if I even bring this up, you'll be able to see a little better. There we go. There's the back of it. There's the front of it. So there's our course notes. And indeed, it's you could see that looked very similar to the screens we just had up. There it is. Full color, high resolution, detailed views of everything we need to know. I don't know why I'm showing you a book and telling you it's high resolution. Of course it is. It's a little blurry as I hold it close up. It's a little bit clearer if you hold it in the right focal point. So that's the ideas behind our course notes. It's really a great way to have everything summarized for you in a way that might be a little bit easier than just trying to step through all the videos and find the information that happens to be there. If you think this might be something that interests you, we not only have our course notes on our website, we also have our practice exams. We'll talk about those in just a bit. And if you buy them together with the course notes and practice exams, there's even a bit of a cost break. So you might want to look at that. Visit our website. Go to professormesser.com/701CN. That's for 701 course notes. Let's do another question. Our next question asks this: which of the following technologies is commonly associated with making in-person credit card purchases from a phone or smart watch? I guess either of those would apply. Would that be tokenization, key stretching, salted hash, hardware security module, or data masking? May not have been exactly the answers you were looking for. Which of the following technologies is commonly associated with making in-person credit card purchases from a phone or smartwatch? Is it tokenization, key stretching, salted hash, hardware security module, or data masking? See if you know the answer. Follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Yeah, went a little bit different direction on that question, didn't it? We thought we knew what we were going to choose as the answer, and then it turned out not to be there. which, by the way, is very common on these exams, is you're reading through the question and you're working through the details and you're trying to figure out what is the thing that we are looking for. Sometimes you have a preconceived notion on what you think the answer is, and it turns out the answer is not there. And that might be where I was sort of leading all of us on this question and working through it. So this changed from a question about A+ topics and turned into a question about Security+, didn't it? Which I guess is the point with going through the Security+ exams. So let's see how you do with this one. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what it is. Oh, all of these are real, though. All of them are in your exam objectives. All of them are important to know for your exam, but we need to match this question with one of these well-known, well-used technologies. Make sure you understand what these are. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, which of the following technologies is commonly associated with making in-person credit card purchases from a phone or smartwatch? Is it tokenization, key stretching, salted hash, hardware security module, or data masking? Well, how'd you do? Let's find out. You locked it in. We'll close it up and you can see, again, 76% of you, just when I think I've made a question hard, 76% of you end up nailing the answer. Tokenization is what we were looking for in this particular question. And you can see a lot of you knew that, wasn't fooling anybody with that. However, hardware security module at 9% and data masking at 8% are also very close to each other, as is key stretching at 3% and salted hash at 1%. So we have a few of these to break through. Now, obviously, tokenization is the one we were looking for in this particular case. That's because, and I guess maybe some people don't even realize that when you're using your phone to pay during checkout, as we are doing right here, you are not sending your actual credit card number across the network. In fact, your actual credit card number, the numbers, if you were to pull your credit card out and look at those numbers never even appear anywhere in this transaction. That's because we've already set up your phone or your smart device with a series of tokens that represent your credit card numbers. And perhaps even more importantly, these are one-time use tokens. That means even if somebody was able to gain access to that token, and that token looks a lot like a credit card number. It was submitted as a credit card number. It got approved as a credit card number, but it's not actually your credit card number. It's just a temporary one-time use number. And if somebody gets their hands on that, they might think they have something. Oh, I have captured the token. Let me now use the token to buy something else. And they put the token out there and it doesn't work because it's only good one time. It will be immediately rejected if that token is used multiple times. There is a nice diagram on our website and on the video in section 1.4. That video name is obfuscation. Find out there and you'll be able to figure out the details of why tokenization would be the right answer for this and why it would not be one of the others. But let's step through these and figure out why it would not be one of the others. We know that tokenization is the answer that we were looking for, so we can not worry too much about that one. But the others that are on this list, for example, hardware security module describes a device that is commonly used to store certificates in a very large enterprise network. That would not be the case here. Data masking is how we see this data once the transaction has occurred. If you look at your receipt, you'll notice that you see very few numbers in your credit card number. Normally, it's only going to show you the last 4 or 5 numbers. Everything else is masked. It has asterisks there to mask all of those numbers so that a human being can't see the numbers. Now, if you were to send a masked number across the network to try to pay for something, it would immediately be rejected because you can't mask your credit card number when you're trying to pay for something. So data masking would not be used when making in-person credit card purchases from a phone or a smartwatch. Key stretching describes a way to take an existing generally an encryption key or a decryption key, and be able to make it much stronger by using it multiple times to effectively stretch it out and make it bigger. In this case, we're not talking about the security associated with the transaction. We're really talking about making these purchases from a phone or smartwatch, and in most cases, we're not using key stretching in those scenarios anyway. And then lastly, a salted hash, which is a great way to store a password, but has nothing to do with making an in-person credit card purchase from a phone or smartwatch. In this case, the technology that we were looking for, the one that is commonly associated with those in-person purchases, is indeed tokenization, and 76% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, which means you already have one of the CompTIA exams, you're already certified in one of those, or perhaps you're collecting continuing education units for some other purposes, I would be glad to send you an email that has been digitally signed that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that CEU is by following these instructions. You must follow these instructions to earn the CEU. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click Contact Us. In that Contact Us form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put May 2024 Security Plus. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, tokenization key stretching. That's a lot of words. It's a bunch of words all stuck together. This also helps me know that I've got a very unique set of words for this month. Sometimes I use them over again. This one won't be used twice. Which of the in this case, whenever you're looking at the question, trying to figure this out, just choose the first two. Tokenization key stretching. If you want to submit this for your continuing education unit credit, again, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, put your name, your email address, and in the body of the message, put May 2024 Security Plus, and in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, tokenization key stretching. I think I said that right. If I didn't, you sort of knew what I meant anyway, right? There's a lot to say there to get all the way through it. So both of those are pretty good at figuring out how this would work. And this is also valid if you're watching this live or watching this on a replay. So if you can go back in time and watch all of our previous videos and earn CEUs by listening in for the continuing education unit credit. Unfortunately, by just watching our videos, you can't watch videos and only earn what you need to renew. You have to get other types of CEUs. So I wish that was the case, but not so much here. It's one where for Security Plus, for example, you can only earn 10 CEUs that are a webinar category towards the total of, I think it's 50, isn't it? 40 or 50 to be able to do that. So hopefully you're familiar with that, what you can do with those. But that is exactly how you would earn a CEU. It takes me about a week to turn these around and get them back to you. Sometimes I'm a little faster, sometimes a little slower, but I will get them back to you if you submit them. We'll make sure that that's the case. Let's see if I can trick you with any questions today. That's not really my intention, but that sort of turns out to be how we do things. So this next question, relatively straightforward. It asks, which of the following would be considered an IOC? Would that be a public key received via email, login required, an app confirmation, server not responding to pings, password stored with a salted hash, or laptop restarted after patching? All of these. So the question again asks, which of the following would be considered an IOC? Public key received via email, login required an app confirmation, server not responding to pings, password stored with a salted hash, or laptop restarted after patching. You think you know the answer? Follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. I have to see how you do with this one. I think these are pretty good, familiar, or at least somewhat familiar to us for those of you working through your 701 exam. Maybe you are already familiar with some of these. See if you happen to know what it is. Pick your answer, lock it in. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. We'll have to see what you think the answer might be. This is going to be one that either I think we do really well on, because I'm noticing the numbers are going up relatively quickly. We either do really well on it or maybe we don't. We'll have to find out in a moment if we think we know what the answers are. This is a very broad question, but we should be able to pick out. I like these questions where you really do have to read through every single one of the answers before you're then able to choose one of the answers. So this is not one where you hear the question and you think you know what the answer is without even seeing the possibilities. We can't do that on this one. You do have to read through every single one of these to then be able to evaluate all of them and then decide if you know the answer or you don't know the answer. Let's see if you do know the answer. The question again, which of the following would be considered an IOC? Would it be public key received via email, login required in app confirmation, server not responding to pings, password stored with a salted hash, or laptop restarted after patching? What did you choose? Let's find out. We'll stop the poll and we can see that 55% say server not responding to pings. It is a majority, but not much of one. We do have almost 20% of you, 19% say login required and app confirmation. 14% of you say a public key received via email. So we have in this view now 3 of these answers that have at least double digits and a very strong double digits, working through those. Password stored with a salted hash got 7% of the scores, and then 3% of the voting is laptop restarted after patching. Well, the key here obviously is understanding what an IOC is. An IOC is referring to an indicator of compromise. This is something that's pretty important if you're a security professional, is being able to look at things and understand, wait a second, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? This is something we do all the time as security professionals. This is something we do constantly, and we're working in an IT security environment, is constantly watching traffic, looking at reports, looking at data, understanding what's on a screen, and really understanding whether that is something that is good or whether that is something that is bad. These indicators themselves might be an interesting spike in network traffic. Maybe a file that has been there for years suddenly has a different hash associated with it. Well, why was that file changed? And is that normal? Should that have changed? Maybe we're getting a large amount of traffic from a country that normally we wouldn't get. So these indicators of compromise can be effectively many and varied. It's not any one thing. It's not any 2 things. It's not any 3 things. It's a vast, large number of possible things that could occur that might make you think this could be a security issue. And so we have to constantly watch for this and be able to understand which one of these might be a security problem. And indeed, if we step through this list, it should jump out right at us and have us really see, oh, is that a security issue? So let's step through all of these. If we go to login required and app confirmation, this is something you've probably become very familiar with in our days of this multi-factor authentication that we're often forced into now. Thankfully, a lot of websites have turned on and required us to have at least some type of multi-factor authentication, whether it is something that is an app on our phone that gives us a pseudo-random number, or whether it's a text message. And I know I look forward to your cards and letters about how text messages are not a very good way to perform any type of multi-factor authentication. And you would effectively be right, although it's better than nothing. So this is the challenges we have with technology today, is we cannot expect everyone to have a smartphone, not expect everyone to be able to install an app on that smartphone. Sometimes you have to use things that are a little more accessible, even if they are not quite as valuable, and working through these. So that's why as you're working through the details of this, make sure that you have a look at login required and app confirmation. That's normal. That's the things that you would normally see. and work through. So nope, that's not a problem. That is, I would not consider an app confirmation to be an indicator of compromise. I would consider that to be a normal login process. Next on our list, public key received via email. Public keys are, by definition, public. They are available for anyone to have access to. It's one of the beauties of public-private key infrastructures is that the private key is something we keep private and close to us. Nobody else sees it. The public key can be given to the world. So sending someone your public key in an email, perfectly normal and perfectly expected. So having received one via email would not be considered an indicator of compromise. Passwords are stored with a salted hash, thankfully. In this particular case, thankfully, they were storing the passwords properly, which means they were storing them as a hash and they were salting it as well. That's a pretty good way to store a password, but it does not indicate any type of problem. If passwords are being stored or being transferred in the clear over the network, that might be an indicator of compromise. But in this case, password stored with a salted hash, that's what you want. That's exactly what we want to have happen there. So this would be exactly what you would choose. A laptop restarted after patching. Well, we've all been through that. Thankfully, I've turned off my patching right now. And thankfully, my operating system gives me the option to only do this in the early morning hours when I'm not sitting here in the studio. But we've all run an update and it said, okay, thanks for running the update. Now we're restarting. Well, that's normal. That's our normal patching process. I would not consider that an indicator of compromise. And then lastly, we have server not responding to pings. And as many of you have said, well, what if they disabled ICMP on the server? What if they have a firewall on the server that doesn't allow us to ping? That could certainly be the case. But of these 5 things, which one of these would be considered an indicator of compromise? If somebody gains access to your server, turns it off, disables it, unplugs it from the network, makes it stop working, that's certainly an indicator of compromise. You're never, by the way, never going to get a neon sign that turns on above your desk that says, hackers in the building, hackers in the building, hackers in the building. But what you might get is a report where suddenly an app or server is no longer responding to pings. So this is where, if you're working through these and trying to figure out the details, that's exactly what you would be working through and trying to figure out. So I think that that's a very good example, and it's very common on the exam, where you have to choose the best answer. Maybe you don't like, and you're thinking, well, that could just be something normal. But every single one of these can be considered normal, except server not responding to pings. That's definitely not normal. That's something that is a little unusual, and it would be an indicator of compromise. So certainly that's something to consider. And 55% of you knew that was the case as well. You got that one absolutely right. That is the case. Server not responding to pings would be considered an indicator of compromise. Is it really a compromise? That wasn't the question. The question is, could it be considered one? And it should be, because if it's not a public key in your email, that's normal. Login and app confirmation, that's normal. Storing passwords with a salted hash, super normal. Restarting a laptop after patching, super normal. So even if you didn't know what that 5th thing was, it had to be server not responding to the pings. It was the only thing left that was not normal. And so that's what you would choose for this one as well. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do another question. I have another one for you in this list. Let me find this one. This next question in our list is one that I am pulling from a different source. Some of you may have seen this next question because it is one that I have from my Security Plus practice exams. For those of you that have already been on the internet and you've looked at a lot of practice exams for this, you've probably seen what I've seen, which is a lot of outdated questions asking you about topics that have nothing to do with this latest version of the exam. The questions themselves are poorly written with questionable grammar. The answers themselves may not even apply to the question that's being written. And then the answers themselves don't exactly tie back to understanding the overall concepts. And I thought, well, if nobody else is going to write any good questions, I'm going to write some. So I wrote an entire book with 3 separate exams, 381 pages, 3 90-question exams in them, 5 performance-based questions in each one of these, which means there are 15 performance-based questions in this book. These are my 701 Security Plus practice exams. And not only, well, why don't I just show them to you, because I think that's going to give you a good idea. Here's the practice exams book. Let's take a question. Again, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. The question asks, this is question A38, which is on page 14 of my book, says a security administrator has copied a suspected malware executable from a user's computer and is running the program in a sandbox. Which of the following would describe this part of the incident response process? Is this eradication, preparation, recovery, or containment? We have 4 different choices to choose from there. And as we step through this, because this is a PDF, if you've got this on your, you got it in your tablet, you've got a stylus that you can write on the screen. My PDF reader allows me to modify and make annotations right here. So I can go, oh, sandbox. Oh, we're doing incident response. So you can mark this up. And if you think you know the answers, you can choose the answer, whatever you think it happens to be. And you can modify this because it's a PDF. It's one of the beauties of using a PDF whenever you're trying to study. Another thing that's useful for this, another thing that I often do, is obviously if you just want to know where the answer is A, B, C, or D, you could go to page 33. And we're on page 14 now, but you'd have to scroll through this book to get to page 33. And the real detailed answers, which are the ones I like, are on page 76. But instead of scrolling through the book to try to find this, I'm simply going to click the words, the details. If I click that, it takes me to page 76, just like that. So it's nice having that hyperlink right in the document itself. The question again at the top of the page, and the answer here is D, containment. And I give you the answer with a description of why I think that's the right answer, which is pretty normal. You can find that on a lot of different practice exams. But what you probably won't find on a lot of different practice exams, and the part that really is frustrating to me, is that if I get a question wrong, I want to be able to know why I got the question wrong. So in my practice exams book, every incorrect answer is fully documented so that you can, if you chose eradication, you can understand why eradication would not have been the best choice. If you chose preparation, I explain why preparation is not the best choice. If I want to understand more about recovery, I go into detail there as well. So this is on every question in this book, has both a documented correct answer and all of the documented incorrect answers, which I think is the most important part of this. If I can't close that circle once I get a question wrong, how am I supposed to learn the topic? So this is a great learning opportunity. And I'll even tell you, for those of you that already have this book, I would recommend, even if you get the question right, go read through the incorrect answers as well, because on your exam, you might have a question about recovery or preparation and not a question about containment. So it's also important you understand all of the technologies that are on here. And if you didn't understand anything about the question, I also put a link into the video that I pulled the question from. In this case, it's a video in Objective 4.8. The video name is Incident Response, and I put both the URL, which is a hyperlink. I can click on that, open up a new window, or a QR code is here. In case you have the physical version, you can use your phone with the QR code that's also in the book, and you can immediately jump to that particular video so that you can, even if it's a physical edition printed book, you can still find the right video and find it very, very, very easily. And once we're done with this, this is a PDF. And if I want to go back to where I started, I can simply click the back button in my PDF. Do you even know a PDF had a back button? They do. We can click the back button and we're back to where we started. And now we can just go to the next question that's on our list. That is my Security Plus practice exams. If you need some more practice exams after we're done here, might be a good place to go to learn more about what you could expect on the exam and have questions written in a way that is intentional to the same style and the same tone as questions you might get on your actual Security Plus exam. You can learn more at my website. Go to professormesser.com/securitype or look for the Security Plus practice exams from the main menus on the website. Everything we've done today comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. This is a very, very valuable document. It's one that you can get by going out to the CompTIA website, searching for CompTIA exam objectives, or you can follow the link on my website, which is professormesser.com/objectives. This tells you everything you need to know for the exam, bullet by bullet by bullet. This is also absolutely free. This is a valuable tool. This should be the first thing you download and read through before you start your studies. And for those of you that were asking in the pre-show, how do I know when I'm ready to take my exam? This is your list. Step through every bullet on this list. And if you understand all of these topics and you can describe these topics to yourself or to someone else, then you'll be ready to take your exam. So I recommend about a week before your exam, you go into this list and you highlight the things you know and you circle or highlight the things you don't. And then you're able to have a much smaller study list to go from. You got a week left. Those are the things that you need to study on so that you can get those last extra topics kind of stuck in the brain. This is where you would find everything that's going to help you. They're out on the CompTIA website. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and use the link to get over there. Or as I mentioned, go to your favorite search engine, go to CompTIA Exam Objectives in your search engine. That will take you, your first link is going to be these exam objectives. Make sure you go to the CompTIA website to get them so that you're getting the latest set of objectives. You don't want to use an older version of objectives or objectives from a different exam. Make sure the objectives that you are using match the version of the exam you're taking. So if you're taking the 601 exam, use the 601 objectives. If you're taking the 701 exam, use the 701 objectives. That's the important part. If you learn nothing else today, that will help you immensely. We got a lot more to go through today, but in the moment, I'll remind you that we do one of these study groups for Security Plus every month, and I have another one scheduled for next month. Our schedule next month is a little bit unusual, a little bit different than what we would normally do. Our A Plus study groups are on June 4th and 6th. We have a Network Plus study group on the 12th and a Security Plus study group on June the 20th. And of course, all of our replays are available on our website. Another great place to go, but we're not done. We've got a whole nother after show. So stick around. I want to take your questions. You can submit those questions right now by going out to professormesser.com/QA and using those tabs at the top of your screen to submit your questions for the after show. In the meantime, don't forget that you can get a weekly Security Plus pop quiz question on our Twitter stream at professormesser.com/Twitter. or whatever they call it these days. We also have that same question on Instagram. We've got our YouTube, our Discord. Simply type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you'd like to find me. You can find that on any of those links. Don't forget about our discount vouchers. Save yourself a few bucks when you're ready to take the exam. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and our course notes, practice exams, and so much more is available on our website. You can find that at professormesser.com/701SB for our success bundle, and find everything you might need from the menus at the top of the website. Well, that brings our first part of the study group to a close, but stick around for the after show. If you enjoyed this, we would love it if you could give this video a thumbs up, and if you subscribe to our channel, we would even love you more. Be a great way to help support what we're doing here. Thanks for joining us on the Security Plus Study Group, and we will see you next time on our SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's take a sip. Okay, I think we should now, there we are, we can now do our after show. The after show is a little bit different. I need to set this up on my side. So one moment, please, while I switch things around on my screen and make it so that you can submit some questions to the study group at any time. And you can do that by following the links on your screen. professormesser.com/QA is a great way to submit anything that you might need. professormesser.com/QA is where you can submit questions for the after show. I will be going through those questions on my side, so you won't see anything pop up on your screen immediately. I get to look at them first, and I get to decide which ones I'm going to answer. You should see the questions I get. Some are very amusing. Some are probably not appropriate for a live stream. So it's good that I do a little bit of editing on my side anyway. But anything you'd like to know about technology, about certifications, about IT, about cybersecurity, about working in the cybersecurity field. You're talking with someone who's been in the field and working and doing this for a very long time. So long, so very long. So I'll be glad to tell you whatever I know, or can tell you whatever I know about that. Feel free to submit those questions and anything you'd like to know in general. Of course, it could be a question about almost anything else as well. You can find that out on the website, professormesser.com/QA. Submit your question there. Okay, we've got a lot of questions to go through. I know there were a lot there. A lot of the things that we are working through when people come to our website are dealing with security, are dealing with certifications, dealing with technology in general. There's a lot of those that we do. For very quickly, I'll step through. Sometimes I get these little questions thrown in where I can quickly answer them. Some people, for instance, on the chat have said, any thoughts on the security, on the SEC AI that you saw a press release for? Well, this could be anything AI in a press release these days has as much value as you would probably expect it to be at this point. As we've all seen, it's been a fantastic, AI has been a tremendous technology for our media to talk about, because they talk about it a lot. But for those of you that have actually tried to use this technology, you've realized it's a great technology for making really bad art, I guess is kind of where we've gone for that. As I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of A in AI for the automation, not a lot of I. We're missing the intelligence part right now. Will they update the intelligence part soon? Perhaps they will. And of course, there are organizations that are coming out with AI related certifications and AI related classes and AI this and AI that. Currently, I guess the jury's sort of out to see where that goes. Is it going to be something that we all grab onto and all of our employers say you have to be AI certified? Right now, I haven't seen anyone doing that across any of these tools, across any of these organizations, not just CompTIA, but any of them. So right now, there's not a big push in the world of technology to have this type of cert, but things change faster than you can even expect in this industry. So we just keep watching. We'll have to see what they do and be able to break these things down. I have to think anyway that a number of us will be also watching. I have a feeling we may just be watching until the point that we just stop watching it. We are sort of noticing the happiness over AI starting to go down. We're hitting that part of the media where they hype it, and then the next step in the media is they trash it. So I'm waiting for the part where they start trashing it, and we'll have to see where we go from there. Eventually, somewhere in there, it all evens out, doesn't it? We all figure out, okay, it's somewhere in the middle. And we work with it from there. We'll have to see from the middle of this what it ends up being. So I think that's the important part. This is a pretty good question. So let's talk about this one. Since this talks specifically about Security Plus, Becca writes, what topics does the 701 stress more than the 601? I've been studying for the 601. So should I start studying for the 701 instead? So there's a lot of questions here, and I want to address them because they are super important. But let's start with the last one first, because I think that's probably a better question to start with. That one is, you've been studying for the 601. Should you just drop everything and now go start studying for the 701? That's sort of the question that we have there. And as I've often told you, why would you do that to yourself? Please don't do that to yourself. One of the things that is important and that takes a long time is studying for these exams. It takes 2 to 3 months on average to study for these exams. So can you imagine going through 2 to 3 months of study for your 601, and then you just throw all of that out and go to 701? And I say throw it all out, but in reality, we're not really throwing it all out, are we? I have some documentation here that might help us. I think it's in last month's study group, so bear with me a moment as I am off mic. I apologize for being way over there. That's the way my audio is set up in here. Let's talk about the differences between the 601 and the 701. I think that'd be a good place to start anyway with our discussion. Here is, everybody needs a nice chart with a lot of circles on it to be able to describe anything. I think you need this. So this is a chart that describes the 601 exam and the 701 exam. So the 601 exam is the circle that's sort of in the middle to the left. And then the 701 exam is the smaller circle to the right. And the reason the 701 is a smaller circle is that the 601 exam, admittedly, the folks at CompTIA created a very large exam for the 601. When we were creating the 601 study materials more than 3 years ago, it seemed like it went on and on forever because they took the 501 exam and they expanded it out and made this monster-sized exam for the 601. But at the time, they really did not have a lot of options on the rest of their certification side. There wasn't an enormous push for the CISA exam or the CASP exam. Now there is. So now there's a place to put some of these other topics. And I think that's what we're starting to see with the 701 is CompTIA even realized, wow, that was a lot of stuff. Over 1,000 objectives. That's a big exam to have to study for. It's bigger than certainly A+, Network Plus, or any of the other exams. So that they decided, let's sort of right size this. Let's put it back into the days of the 501 exam. And so that's why the 701 it's slightly smaller. The number of objectives is roughly 662. Now, the topics are admittedly very similar. We talk about the cryptography. We talk about cloud-based technologies. We talk about threats. We talk about vulnerabilities. We talk about patching. We talk about all of this in both of these exams. But there's obviously a very different quantity of topics to study for in both of these. So there's obviously differences there. Perhaps more importantly, and the thing that I have pause about, especially about this exam, and the reason I always stress to you, you should always study from materials that match the version of the exam you plan to take. You should always study from materials that match the version of the exam you plan to take, which means if you're taking the 601 exam, make sure you study from materials specifically written for the 601 exam. And if you study for the 701 exam, make sure you study for materials that are specifically written for the 701 exam. And as this chart shows, that's because about half of the content on the 701 was on the 601, which means half of the content for the 701 is brand new and you've never seen it before. That's a pretty big difference in these two. Now, normally there's about a 20 to 30% delta between different versions of exams, between A+ exams, Network Plus exams, and Security Plus exams. This one, it's 50%. That means if you went into a 701 exam and you only studied from 601 materials, you're going to get about a 50 at best as a score because half of this material you've never seen before. So that's the important part of this. And that's why whenever you're starting to really look into details of these certs, you should not be looking broadly. Oh, they both talk about cloud. They both talk about vulnerabilities. They both talk about cryptography. Basically the same. They're basically identical. They're not at all. They're very, very different in what they're asking you. Now, the topics, there will be similarities between them. As you can see, everything that's in the middle here, absolutely similar. But all these topics are brand new. So you have to be ready for that if you're going to study for the 701. So let's go back to that question that Becca asked. What topics does the 701 stress more than the 601? Well, for that, you'll need to go into the exam objectives themselves to see exactly what those differences are. And fortunately, you can do that. You can grab the 601 objectives, you grab the 701 objectives, you put them right next to each other, and you look at what the differences are. That's what I did. That's how I came up with those numbers. So I spent hours evaluating not only what was added, but what was removed in both versions of these exams. So there's quite a bit of work that has to go through the process of doing that. But once you've done it, you get some great metrics out of it, some great statistics and great information to pull from. So hopefully that's something that can help you on your studies. What I would highly urge you, though, is that if you've already been studying for the 601, you've got 601 books, you've gone through the 601 videos, you've gone through all of the exam objectives for the 601, go take the 601 exam. You've studied a long time for this. You still got 2 months left before you have to finish up, before this exam is retired. So you still have plenty of time to finish up your studies. Why would you now redirect the 701 when you know the 701 has all of those changes associated with it, you're effectively having to start over, because you can't just pick out of a book or a video the things that are different. You now have to look at all of it as a whole. So that's the important part of this, is that you are the one that needs to make that decision, of course. And some people do change from the 601 to 701. But if you've already made both a financial and time investment into the 601, you have time to finish this up before the exam is done. And as I mentioned, whether you pass the 601 exam or the 701 exam, the result is identical. The result is the Security Plus certification. There's no difference between those. So that's why I think that's an important thing to consider as well. Another question, this is from the chat room. Nice follow-ups in the chat. Vouchers for 601 are not going to be sold after May 31st, right? Well, the vouchers that you will find that are on the CompTIA website. In fact, why am I talking about it? Let's go to the CompTIA website and let's look at the store for CompTIA that has all of these vouchers on it. This is where you go if you want to pay full price for a voucher. You go to the CompTIA store. But if you browse through the certification vouchers and you look at just Security Plus, let's just click Security Plus, click. This brings up just a bunch of crazy on the screen. You've got Security Plus Voucher Exam SY0-701, Security Plus Voucher Exam SY0-601. Those are two different things. You can see they cost the same. That's the price in US dollars if you were to pay full price. One of the things they don't tell you, though, this is the same voucher. This is exactly the same voucher. No, this one says 701 and this one says 601. They're different, right? Nope. They are not. In fact, I could buy the 601 voucher, and I can go take the 701 exam. I could buy a 701 voucher and I can apply that towards a 601 exam. It's the same voucher. So there's not going to be a time when CompTIA stops selling a 601 voucher, because they never did sell a 601 voucher. They sell a Security Plus voucher. And that Security Plus voucher, when you purchase it, is good for a year. And you can apply that Security Plus voucher towards any exam, 601 or 701. Doesn't matter. In fact, you could buy it. You could have bought this voucher before November, when the only exam available was the 601, and not used it until today. In fact, you could use it in August when the 601 is no longer around and use it for the 701 exam. So that's why. So that's why people are going, but why are there different versions? And do they get rid of one? And they don't. It's the same voucher. It's just marked differently on the website. I think so that people who are taking the 601 can clearly see there's a voucher that they can buy to take the 601 exam. And another one that they can clearly see that the voucher is there to take the 701 exam. I think it's just a way to make people very clear that this voucher will work for them. But in reality, the voucher is even more flexible than that, because you can use it really for any exam. P. Sherman in the chat room asks, is there a cheaper place to get vouchers? Gosh, P. Sherman, there certainly is. I'm so glad you asked. If you were to go to professormesser.com/vouchers, why, there's a whole set of discounted vouchers already available for you on the Professor Messer website. For example, if we click Security Plus, not only do we get a nice Google ad that pops up, but it tells us instead of you paying the $404 that you saw on the CompTIA website, you only pay $362 if you happen to be in the US. Obviously, if you're in Canada, there will need to be an exchange rate associated with that, but that is the rate regardless of what's going on. So you're saving some money by buying it on the Professor Messer website. And as you could see, can be used for the SY0-601 exam or the SY0-701 exam, because it's the same voucher. So it's nice that we get that qualification, right? We know immediately it can be used for either one of those. Also, by the way, if you are a student, right at the top of the Professor Messer website says, if you're a college student, you can purchase vouchers at the academic CompTIA store. This applies to college students that are in the US, Canada, or I believe the UK. And there's a link right at the top. And the reason I put that link there, well, let me show you. It takes you to a store that looks very similar to the CompTIA store, but at the top it says academic. You can't see that because my big head's in the way. There we go. Academic right there. So it's the academic store. This is only for people who are actively in a college class. You can't be a college, you have to be a college student, an active college student for this to work. But if we go to Security Plus vouchers, $262 for an academic voucher. That's a pretty big discount over the 404, isn't it? So that's why I tell people, if you're a student, get the student voucher at the academic store, and a quick link to the academic store is right at the top of professormesser.com/vouchers. But if you're not a college student, here's the vouchers for the rest of us, for the ones that are not students. So that's a very good example. Can you use that if you've graduated from college? You cannot. It's for people who are students that are in class, that have a class that they're taking, and it confirms that that's the case. So you can't sneak around that. You can't say, oh, but no, I've got an EDU email. Doesn't matter. They want to know that you're a student. They will check to be sure that you are a student when they do that. So that's another good place to go for some discounts if they apply to you. Otherwise, we've got vouchers on professormesser.com/vouchers that are also discounted for the rest of you that are here. Other questions. Let's sift through other questions that you have submitted by visiting this link, professormesser.com/QA, and be able to work. What if you bought it at $404 and didn't see the student voucher? Oh, that's too bad. Because there are, one of the things you'll notice in the CompTIA website is probably an important term. Let's see if I can find it so we can kind of step through it. This is sort of applies to certification vouchers in general. If I drill down into a Security Plus voucher, one of the things they mention on the voucher page, this is the voucher description page for the SY0-701 voucher. If you scroll down to the important terms and conditions, vouchers are non-refundable and non-returnable. It's because they're a digital code. Once you send the digital code to someone, well, now you don't know what happened to that code. Did they sell the code to someone else? Did they give the code to someone else? Did they use the code themselves? There's no control over this once it gets into the hands of a third party. So unfortunately, they are non-refundable and non-returnable. So that's just nature of the beast. That's sort of how these work in general. So if you're someone who's trying to find your way through that list, that's what that's about. Let's do some more questions. Other questions about vouchers while we're talking about, let's see. Are there no student vouchers with retakes? Well, no, because the voucher is so inexpensive. You just buy 2 of them. And in fact, if you look at the CompTIA website, I don't know if you noticed this one. Let's go back to these vouchers on the CompTIA website, just so we can sort of understand what these differences are. CompTIA, for some reason right now, is marketing these Security Plus vouchers at $404. But they also have a retake voucher that you can only apply towards the same exam is $808. What? Why would I buy a retake when it's the same cost of buying 2 of the other? Why wouldn't I just buy 1 of the other, then wait to see if I pass or not, and then just buy another one for no difference in cost? I don't know. I don't know why they did that. They changed that at the beginning of the year. They changed that in February. And I don't know. Maybe that's their thing. That's a CompTIA thing. So I don't know. They don't allow me to sell retakes, but at this point, that's sort of pointless. So it's fine that I don't have retakes. The retake is you just retake it and you buy another voucher. I think that's the more specific, a better way to do that and work through it. That's the important part of that. So there's your voucher overview. Maybe it's giving you some insight into what happens behind the scenes. The important part is you're spending your money in the right way and with the best voucher for the things that you need to do. I think that means if you're a student, get the student voucher. If you're not a student, buy a voucher through a legitimate discounted source and don't buy a retake voucher. I think those are the 3 rules. That's what we learned. What did we learn on the show tonight, Craig? That's what we learned. Other questions. Let's sift through others that you put here. Let's talk about renewals. So let's say that you have now taken the exam, You've taken a number of different exams, and William says, I've done this. I've already have the A+, and I passed Security Plus. Will my A+ renew from the date I passed my Security Plus? Just wondering, since I heard renewing a cert will also renew all others. Is that what you heard? Where did you hear this, William? William probably heard it on the CompTIA website, because that's where they put everything. Let's go out to the CompTIA website. There's a link there for continuing education. And under the continuing education option, I'm going to choose the option for how to renew, which is exactly what we knew. And they give you an overview of the renewal process. Let's say that you're going to renew your certification by taking a higher level CompTIA certification. And they have a link for that right on the website. This gives you a table that describes what exams or what certifications renew other certifications. So in this case, I believe it was William who was talking about Security Plus. So if we click on Security Plus CE, if you were to pass your Security Plus exam, it would fully renew the Network Plus and the A+. So if you already had your A+ certification, and let's say your A+ certification was going to expire tomorrow. So today you took your Security Plus and you passed it, and now you're Security Plus certified. It will now renew your A+, and your renewal date is always associated with the highest level cert that you earn. So in this case, Security Plus. Your new renewal date turns into Security Plus. Same thing applies if you took the A+ last week, and it's good for 3 years, and you take the Security Plus today, it is now renewing your A+, but for another 3 years. So you effectively had a week of A+, and you've extended it a week in that 3-year period by renewing, by buying a newer or by passing a higher level certification. So there are advantages there. Now you need to go to this list to know exactly what these are. For example, if you go to Linux Plus, Linux renews A+. Linux Plus does not renew Network Plus. But you would not know that if you did not go to the website and had a look at that, because I would just assume Linux Plus, being on this list a higher level cert than Security Plus, does not renew Security Plus, does not renew Network Plus. So make sure you go to the CompTIA website and look through their information there so you know exactly what exams renew what certifications. That's an important one. You could run into a scenario where you just weren't aware that renewed or didn't renew something, and then you really are in trouble, because that's going to cause problems if you expected it to renew. And of course, it does it based on that date that you renewed it. All those details and documentation are on the CompTIA website. I realize there's a lot there that you would have to work through, but that's the important part of that. Other folks in the chat room were talking about the cost of renewing. And that's another important consideration as well, because when you're renewing a certification, it doesn't necessarily happen for free. In fact, there are many different ways to renew your cert. Let's go back to that How to Renew page and have a look at it. The How to Renew page gives us information here about the renewal cycle, the continuing education units, and continuing education fees. So they even explained to you they're required for renewal, must be paid prior to renewing your cert, unless you renew by earning a qualifying higher level CompTIA cert or pass the Cert Master CE. So normally you have to pay these maintenance fees to renew your cert. There's annual maintenance fees associated with renewing your certification. But let's take that scenario that William was talking about, where he took his Security Plus and it renewed A+. You pay nothing in maintenance fees. Now, obviously you had to pay to take Security Plus, so there's a cost, I guess, if you look at it that way, but no additional cost to renew that. And that's what they say there. They also say if you take your Cert Master CE, which is one of the many applications available in the Cert Master line of products, this is a renewal product. This is a renewal tool where you, if you're getting down to the last week or two of your exam and you want to be able to renew without collecting CEUs, you don't want to take an exam from a third party, you don't want to take a CompTIA exam, you just want to renew it. You want to do it fast. CompTIA has this product called CertMaster CE that allows you to renew it relatively quickly. You can certainly do it in a day, for example. There have been people that have come into our chat, into our Discord, and said, my certification expires tomorrow. What can I do now to renew it? It's too late to study for an exam. It's too late to collect CEUs, but you could go to CertMaster CE and renew today. And that's what he did. He went out to CompTIA. He bought CertMaster CE, which is really only a little bit more expensive than paying the annual maintenance fees. And he went through the process, came back later in the day and said, I did it. I renewed. I submitted it. I'm good for another 3 years. And all I did was go through CertMaster. All I did was go through CertMaster CE. It's no walk in the park, but he was able to do it in less than a day. So there's a very good example of how finding the right method of renewal can be very important, especially when you're short of time. So make sure you're aware of that before you hit that expiration date. That will be important too. Okay, let's keep going through our list of questions. Thank you for submitting them. You can always submit a question. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit a question. Other ones that we have here, a lot of people submitting. Thank you, by the way, for submitting so many great questions that are in here. Since we were just talking about this, this version of the exam that we have here, here we go. That's the better one to look at. Anonymous says, how much time does the typical person take to study and prepare for the Security Plus exam? Well, I haven't yet met a typical person, but someday I hope to meet one. I hope to find a typical person that I can communicate with. This is a very good example, though, of generalities where it doesn't necessarily match what you're trying to accomplish. And I'm that way. For example, if I look at this right here, how much time does the typical person take on average? I would say that probably most people, I say on average, those people who are average probably takes them approximately 2 to 3 months to get through a single A+ exam, a Network Plus exam, or Security Plus exam. So that's pretty close to what I see generally is 2 to 3 months. However, you talk to someone like me taking an exam, I'm already going to say it's going to take me 6 months. I got a lot of stuff going on. My world is chaotic. I've got things I have to do during the day. I get very little time at night. So therefore, it's probably going to take me much longer to study for my exam. I have other people that come to my site who have already been in the industry for years. They are very knowledgeable with IT security. They have already been working as security engineers, but now they're beginning work with an organization that requires them to have their Security Plus. So in many ways, this happens all the time. They really feel like even though entry-level Security Plus is an entry-level exam and they are not an entry-level employee, the organization still expects them to have that cert. And of course, they will get higher-level certifications as well, but they have to go back and take this exam. They'll read through the exam objectives, finish all of their studies in 2 weeks, and go take their exam, and they're done. So in 2 weeks, they're Security Plus certified. Again, not typical, not normal, not average, but it does happen. I see a lot of people on the YouTube, on the Reddit, talk about, I do nothing about technology and I passed my exam in 7 hours. That's all I studied. I just studied 7 hours. There are a lot of crazy stories about people that will jump into it. And I went 3 days with no sleep and I passed my exam. Okay, well, that's not typical. And I don't recommend you go through that process. I recommend you hit the exam objectives and you go through every single one of those bullets and you learn the topics and then go take the exam. And that process takes about 2 to 3 months on average. So your time frames may vary a bit. They might vary a lot. But I think it's something to consider if you are working through those exams and working through them methodically. Question in the chat room to follow up is, what if you took a boot camp? Aha, the boot camp. We've seen these online, right? Go take the boot camp for Security Plus. We'll teach you everything you need to know about Security Plus in a week. You'll take that exam, you'll pass it in 1 week, 7 days with our boot camp. And if you look at the people that go through the boot camp, they will tell you Gosh, there was no way we were able to get through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of detailed security topics in the time frame that they set aside of 5 days, of 7 days, and making that happen. There's a physics problem there. There's a time motion study that you can do with, here's the objectives you need to know. Here's how much time you have in the day to get through those objectives. There's no way you can cram those into a week. There's really no way you can cram those into 2 weeks. So for the vast majority of these short-term, quick cybersecurity boot camps, they're relatively worthless, because by the time you've gotten through the 2 weeks, you still don't have everything you need to know to pass the exam. And if you did extra study before you went to the boot camp, then you've already learned the things that the boot camp was going to teach you anyway. There is a kind of a different approach to this, however, is that there are a number of people or a number of organizations that market their traditional Security Plus courses as boot camps, which I don't think is necessarily accurate either. I've seen a number of community colleges and other training facilities that say, we'll take you on this 3-month boot camp. Boot camp isn't 3 months long, people. That's not where the term came from. That's not what they do in the military. It's like a 6-week, you're in, it's intense, and you're out. But even 6 weeks, I think, is not enough for Security Plus. I think we need a little bit more. So I would, whenever I see the term boot camp these days, I recommend you look a little deeper into it. You find out just how long they say it's going to be. And you have to wonder why they charge you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for something that statistically can't do what they say it does. Physically, there is no way for that to work. You can't put that much water, can't take 10 gallons of water and put it into a 1-gallon jug. It just, you can't do it. It doesn't work that way. So I would highly recommend you be very careful. Now, if this boot camp was just a marketing term used by a community college to get you into a semester of classes to teach you Security Plus, that's completely legitimate. That is perfectly normal. So that's why I tell people, be very careful about what they tell you with boot camps and who's giving the boot camp and how long the boot camp takes, because there is a physics problem we have to work through where the ability to get that much done in that short a period of time can sometimes be a bit questionable. Other questions. Let's keep going. We will not discuss the port number question this month. Thank you for submitting it. Because what I tell people is you should learn everything that's in the CompTIA exam objectives. That is where you should focus your 100% of your efforts. If you happen to find a port number in that list, you should know that port number. There aren't any port numbers in the Security Plus exam objectives. Someone even showed up in our Discord recently with a list of what must have been 100 port numbers and said, my instructor gave me this list I need to study for Security Plus. And so I, of course, asked the question, oh, well, how many of those port numbers are in the exam objectives? They said, I didn't find any. Like, why are you studying them then? If CompTIA asks you questions and effectively 100% of the questions on the exam come from these exam objectives. Okay, 98 sometimes. But if 98% of the exam was from the exam objectives, do you think there's ever a good reason to go outside the scope of those objectives? The answer is no. There's never a good reason to do that. So don't go outside the scope of the exam objectives. Skip and stay on the objectives. Stick to the objectives. Do not deviate from the objectives and you will pass your exam. That's what we're talking about here. Now, do you need to know port numbers as a rule in security to be a good and viable support engineer in the world of IT security? Of course you do. But there's also a whole world of things you're going to need to know that are not in the Security Plus exam objectives. Our goal is to get you certified. Your goal is to continue building on that to have a very large and extended career in IT. So that's why. It doesn't work that way. So make sure you're familiar with what's in the objectives. If it's not in the objectives, don't waste your time. Waste your time, spend your time sticking on the objectives. There's things you could study that we are guaranteed to need to know on the exam. And that's much more viable than studying things that may or may not ever appear on the exam. So that's why. That's why port numbers are relatively worthless to study for Security Plus when you compare it to everything else you need to know. Now, if you are smart and you've gone through every bit of the Security Plus exam and you know every single bullet and you are 100% comfortable with 100% of the exam objectives, sure, you can go study whatever you want. I haven't met that person yet. I'm looking forward to running into them someday. They can tell me more about it. But port numbers are important to know for, in general, in IT, certainly important to know for networking, certainly important to know for the A+ and Security Plus and other exams as well, but it's important that you stick to the objectives. Stick to the objectives. Our goal is to get you certified, and once you get certified, you can do whatever you want. That's the important part. Other questions. Let's keep going through this. I hate to even bring this one up. I just talked so badly about this, Tyler. Tyler's probably thinking, oh, and I submitted this question where Tyler asked, if I'm trying to get my first role as a cybersecurity analyst, I'm excessively aware it's not considered an entry-level role. Okay, well, Tyler's clued in here. How do I do it? I've already completed a boot camp. What kind of boot camp, Tyler? Which took me in depth through all the necessary topics and gave me some cute projects. And I'm working on my Security Plus, but it's still crazy hard to get an interview, much less a job. Thank you. So I have a feeling, based on the description that Tyler gave, though, that this was not one of those quick in and out kind of boot camps, because there were projects, there was in-depth, you went through every necessary topic. That means you went through a legitimate training facility, organization, class, and probably they called it a boot camp. It really wasn't a boot camp. I have a figure out that's what that was. And for context in the chat room, indeed, Tyler says, nope, it was a 6-month boot camp. It was at UC Davis. It was exactly the way you wrote it, Tyler. It's exactly the way you wrote it. It was a legitimate class over an extended period of time where we really did learn everything we needed to learn, where we really did do hands-on projects, where it really was a valuable use of your time. Great. Fantastic. They just call it boot camp because that's what, marketing-wise, that's what a lot of organizations do these days. Completely legitimate, so you did fit into the right place. But here's the question. The real question Tyler has is not about the boot camp. The question was, now how do I get a job in security by doing this? So there's your challenge, of course. And as Tyler clearly puts into the question, there's not a lot of entry-level positions in what the world calls cybersecurity, which is what we call here IT security, because we're really focused on the IT side and we're really focused on the security part of IT. There's obviously cybersecurity is very broad. It can involve application development. I see application developers. It could involve other parts of the organization. It can involve things that are outside the scope of IT. Cybersecurity is just sort of a broad term that doesn't have a definitions. But as we talk about security, we're really talking about IT security. We're talking about a group of people within an organization that are responsible for maintaining, protecting the data of the company, the data of the organization, and making sure that the proper tools are in place, permissions, rights, access, encryption, storage, transfer, all of those things are in place to protect that data. So with that in mind, and understanding that jobs in IT security require you to have a foundation in operating systems, hardware, networking, routing, switching, databases, applications, and cloud, goes on and on and on and on. There's all these things you have to know. You need a foundational knowledge in to be able then to properly secure those things. How are you able to secure the cloud if you don't know how the cloud works? How is it that you can secure a network if you don't know how routers operate? So there's an obvious link there that needs to happen. Unfortunately, what tends to happen in this industry, for better or worse, is that a lot of organizations will try to encourage you to get trained in security because security is very popular. It's very hot. It's something that there's a lot of job openings in security. There's a lot of need for trained security professionals. And there's an obvious goal that a lot of people have to get into a role where they are working in the IT security field. The problem is that, from this perspective, the problem is that employers would like to see that you already have a foundational knowledge in operating systems, in networking, and then finally be able to apply all of those into a position in security. And they're not going to hire someone who's never worked with Linux, that doesn't know anything about how Linux secures anything, that doesn't understand the internals of security in Windows, that doesn't understand networking and what protocols are secure and which are not secure, and how to build a VPN and how to configure other types of security technologies on the network. There's your challenge, is that employers don't want to hire you unless you've already built out that knowledge base. And so that's what I tell people to do. I say, don't worry and focus so much on what's happening with your networking, or don't worry so much about what's happening on your security side and trying to leap over everybody and get that security role, because relatively speaking, there are very few entry-level security roles out there. Relatively speaking. Are there security roles out there that are entry-level? There are. I've never said any different. Of course there are, but there's not a lot. When you compare it to entry level into the operating system side, entry level into the data center side, even entry level into networking, there are many, many, many more jobs available than entry level into security, because there really isn't an entry level market for security, because you need to know those other things first. It's like saying, I just finished my degree in entrepreneurship. I've submitted my name for CEO everywhere, and nobody seems to want to pick me up. I've got my degree. I've been trained in CEO. I've submitted my name for CEO. Why are they not calling me back? Because you can't just show up entry-level CEO. There is no entry-level CEO. I guess that's not entirely true. I am a good example of an entry-level CEO, but you build that yourself. That would not be someone else assigning you to that. So you need to figure out how to make this work. And I tell people all the time, now let's set a strategy. Let's learn as much as we can about Windows, about Linux, about Mac OS. Let's add on to that as much knowledge as we can about networking and switching and routing and building those networks out and setting up IPsec tunnels and setting up the firewall that connects all these networks together and building systems for authentication within those networks and operating systems, and having all of those work together to be able to protect our data. Build that foundation first. Then we have an easy path up. It's an easy next step into security from there. Is that something that will take 2 weeks? Nope. Will it take 2 years? That's a better start. It might take you 2 years just to get through the operating system part, or longer. And then getting into networking is another couple of years or more. And then finally, you can roll that into something that may be related to security. So I don't want to dismiss anyone from looking for those entry-level positions. If there happens to be a SOC in your area, a security operations center, there are often entry-level positions for a SOC, but those are effectively help desk positions with kind of a focus on security. They're not technically security positions. I really don't think so, but they give you at least more upward mobility than a non-SOC type position in the world of security. But I think what you should take from that is you now have an insight into security, and you understand the goal of IT security professionals. And now that you've been through this extended boot camp, you now understand some of the tools and the tasks and the daily processes that they must go through. Well, now we need to redirect our efforts. And now how do I build myself into that role? Let's go find something dealing with operating systems. Let's find a server administration role. Let's find a desktop administration role. Let's find one that focuses on Active Directory. Let's learn everything we need to know about Active Directory and forests and pruning and merging and security associated with those. Let's now move into networking. Let's learn about switching. Let's learn about routing. Let's learn about dynamic routing. Let's learn about wide area networks. Let's learn about wireless networks. Let's build IPsec tunnels between all of those. Let's plan and create the network that we want for tomorrow. Let's do our IP addressing schemes. Let's figure out how to make the network more resilient. All of that goes into this building process that finally gets you to security. And I have met with and talked to IT security professionals across hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies and talked to them about the path they took, talked to them about the jobs they had that got them into that role. And in fact, many of them I worked with very early in my career when I started my work with operating systems, and very early in my career when I worked on the networking side. And then I walk into these offices of these companies and meet with folks that I was working with back then, because they also started with operating systems. They also started with networking, and it was a natural path that led them into security. So very often I would go into these companies like, I know you, we've met before. I talked to you when we were doing protocols and we were doing sniffer and we were looking at the traffic on the network and we were trying to figure out how to make the network work better. Like, yep. I learned everything I needed to know about protocols and security and encryption and IPsec tunnels, and now I'm doing security. It makes perfect sense. And that happened over and over and over again. So that was sort of a long question to Tyler's very relatively simple question, which is, how do I do it? How does that happen? Very simple question. A very, very involved, a much more involved answer to get to that path. But I think it's an important one to consider, especially when we need people in security. We need more trained professionals protecting our data. Obviously, we need that. So I would highly recommend you, in your mind, put together a strategy. And it's a very broad strategy. You don't have to come up with specifics. You don't have to come up with an exact date on when this would happen, but look at the positions in your area, in your local geographic area. Find the companies that are hiring for a Linux professional, a Windows professional, a network professional. Get into those roles. Learn as much as you can about those technologies. That will be what propels you to this higher level. We're constantly leveling up in IT, but we have to start somewhere where we can level up and use those technologies as a place to rebound from, and being able to work that through. And if you're someone who is trying to make the most of security, it's a bit of a road to get there. But speaking as someone who was a security systems engineer with a pretty large, what is today the largest firewall company in the world, it's a great path to go. It's always fun. It's always interesting. There's always something new to learn. It is probably, security was really the pinnacle of when I was working for third parties, that was the pinnacle of my career, was working in those particular roles. Lots of fun, lots of interesting. You meet the smartest people doing amazing things, and every organization needs smart security people. So it's a great place to position yourself for an extended career where you have longevity and support and options, probably most important, options. If I had to pick any one of those things that positioned me best for security, for technically the role I had as a firewall SE, it was all about networking. I say you should learn as much networking as possible. Get as familiar with the routing and the switching and the planning and the designing and the implementation as you can. It is remarkable how much networking we do on the security side. And if you are not familiar or comfortable with networking technologies, with subnetting, with understanding what's happening at the protocol level, with capturing a packet and reading through a packet capture, you're not going to do very well on the security side. So become more familiar with that, and I think you'll be doing just fine with everything else. We have some time for another couple of questions, so let's squeeze a couple more in there to be familiar with. I think there are a couple of others I want to focus on. I think this is one we're working through differences in these questions. I'm sort of reading and talking through at the same time. This is a pretty good one because we've all been here, but I've certainly been here. Michael asks, if you took the 701 and you failed the first time, Michael, is the second time harder than the first one? Michael's asking for a friend. Michael, this is probably, it's a pretty common question, but I don't know that I have a good answer for you. The answer is it might be, or it might not be. And that's because I don't know what the person taking this exam studied. Now, what I can guarantee you is that the first exam and the second exam will be pulling their content from the same source. The problem is you don't know what it's going to pull. Now, for those of you that kind of look through my diagram, let's look at this comparison diagram that I have for the 601 and the 701 exam. So the 601 exam has, let's just round it down to 1,000 objectives. The 701 exam has 660 objectives, somewhere in there, over 600, almost 700 objectives. There's a lot of objectives on these exams. How many questions do you get? You get 90 as a max, which means in many cases you get less than 90. You get 85, you get 80, in some cases even the 70s. So there's your challenge is now you're looking at a set of objectives and they could ask you 90 questions from a maximum of the 701 exam out of 662. All right, well, the first 90 questions, there's no way of those 90 questions that you would ever be asked everything in the exam objectives. This, by the way, is one of the number one arguments people give me is I took this exam and I studied this topic and it never showed up on my exam. Yeah, it's not, it possibly could or it could not. In fact, I'll show you if you look at the exam objectives, because why wouldn't we at this point? We're going to go back to the objectives. There they are. So these are the 701 objectives. I believe they are version 5. So they have on the first set, they tell you how much of these are going to be on the exam. So of section 1, general security concepts, 12% of the exam is from domain 1. All right, well, let's look at domain 1. It is all of these topics. Let's keep going. Nope, that's it. Those 2 pages. So section 1, 12% of the exam is here. Okay, it's 2 pages of content. That means that you might get on the exam, it's 12%, and there are 90 questions on the exam. You might get 10 questions from this. Maybe. Less than, really. But there's a lot more bullets here than 10. I'm sort of rounding up so we can make the math a little bit easier. But that gives you an idea of, look at all of these bullets, and you might get 10 of these topics on an exam. Now, if you take an exam again, the exam is going to give you a different set of questions because they have a big pool of questions that are pulled from. And when you start the exam, it pulls 90 questions as a max and presents to you those 90 in the distribution that they associate with those different domains. So the next exam you take, you might get another set of questions, another 10 questions from domain 1 that you've never seen before on different topics. Or you might get some that are repeated. I mean, statistically, it seems like you'll get at least 1 or 2, right? That could be duplicated across these different exam versions. I think they try to avoid that, but it's all random. So statistically, that could certainly happen. But does this mean that it's harder the second time than the first time? It doesn't. It really means that you need to know every exam objective. So regardless of what they ask you, you will be ready to answer it. If you don't know the content, yeah, it will be harder. But the difficulty level of the questions on the exam is pretty straightforward across the bar. There's not really a lot of questions that are, this question was so much harder than this question. It's really about what you know. And I get this a lot is I have people that come to my site and I studied for 6 months. I went through every exam objective. I used it as a checklist. Anything I didn't know, I went back and I studied that, and I knew everything on the exam objectives. And then when I took the exam, it was simple. This was way easier than you said it was going to be. This was much easier than what people told me. No, it wasn't. You knew it. You knew the content better. Of course it was easier. You studied and you really understood the content. So of course it's going to be easy. This is the challenge. And we always say, well, that was an easy question. Well, it was easy because you knew the answer. And if you don't know the answer, this exam was full of trick questions. That's it. That's what the people who didn't study, that's what I always hear. This exam was so full of trick questions. You just wouldn't believe it. It wasn't a trick question. It was only a trick question because you didn't know what they were asking. I guess in that way, it was kind of a trick, wasn't it? So know your content. You'll never get a trick question. Know your content. You'll never have to worry about how they ask the question. Know your content. Not one exam is going to be harder or easier than another one. You'll be able to just waltz through it. The beauty here is CompTIA tells you right out of the gate, here's what you need to know. And if you've never taken a Microsoft exam, a Cisco exam, a Red Hat exam, or any other type of industry certification exam, you never get this list from anyone else. Remarkably rare to ever see that. But CompTIA, that's how it works. That's the important part of it. Okay, let's fit another one out. We have some time. So let's keep going into this list. Oh, I like these kind of questions. These are good ones. This is from Rolando, who asks, I started a new role in February as an information assurance analyst. Congratulations. However, I don't feel the compensation is where it should have been. Join the club, Rolando. What is your advice for growing your salary in your career? Okay, let's have the salary conversation. I love these. The goal, your goal in this career, the goal of many people in this career, my goal in this career was to financially do as well as I can so that myself and my family can be comfortable and have options. That's what I want. And in fact, one of the things you always hear thrown around in this industry is you can make 6 figures doing IT. That's what they throw at you. The thing is, you really can make 6 figures doing IT. You absolutely can. Do you start in IT at 6 figures? You do not. You absolutely don't. And in fact, one of the things that perhaps is a little short-sighted that I often see in our chat on our Discord is people will come in and say, I was studying IT and I got my certifications and I was qualified for these entry-level roles, but what they were willing to pay me was less than what I was making as a bartender, so I've gone back to being a bartender. And I immediately reach out to them and say, please reconsider. Please reconsider your scope and your long-term view of what this is going to do for you. Because although it's entirely possible for you to get a job in a service industry or some other role that will pay you more than an entry-level help desk position in a lot of companies, they're never going to be able to keep up with your upward mobility in IT. They will never be able to keep up with that. There are very few bartenders out there that are making $150, $200 a year just by being a bartender. Remarkably few. Are there some? There are some out there, absolutely, but remarkably few. And in IT, you're able to move up in relatively short time frames compared to what you would see in other industries. So for example, we often say help desk, your first job, especially a help desk job, that's a 6 to 9 month job. My first IT job out of college was a 6-month job. I learned everything I needed to know. I kind of got the lay of the land. I learned a lot about the technology. I immersed myself in that entry-level position, learning everything I could about hardware and operating systems and installing storage devices and replacing memory and the intricacies of the industry. I tried to learn as much as I could so that I could then very quickly move out of that job into a higher level position within a different company. And very often it's a different company to be able to do that. You need to get your foot in the door of IT. You need to get that first job in IT because that's what allows you to now quickly propel yourself up through the ranks. And it can happen very, very, very quickly in the IT industry. I would argue faster than any other industry you would run into. Very rare to find another industry where you could do that even faster. The Rolando specifically says, compensation I don't think it's where it should have been. Well, it may not be. And I think as technology professionals, we really hope that we are able to move into roles where we're making more money, but it's difficult to have that get. It's difficult to ask that when you are entry level because there's a lot of other people out there in the world who have the same credentials and the same knowledge as you. What you have to start doing in this industry is becoming a specialist in something. And that specialization can tend to change over time. And you can do this in any job, by the way. So if you are someone who gets into a role where you are a Linux administrator, or let's do Windows. You're a Windows administrator. Windows is obviously everywhere in every company. Everybody's running it on their workstations. A lot of people running this as servers and services. You have a large Active Directory infrastructure. There's people doing SQL databases on Windows. There's web services running in Windows. Almost every aspect of IT can run on a Windows operating system. And knowing Windows is useful, but knowing Active Directory is even more useful. Knowing how to manage multiple Active Directory forests, understanding the rights and permissions between them, understanding how to properly prune and merge these things together and configure them in a way where they can talk properly to each other with the proper rights and permissions is a very rarefied air. It's hard to find a good Active Directory person. Very difficult. There's a lot of them out there, but you got to look for them. You got to go find them to get them because you have to go through this round of knowledge transfer to get you where you need to be a specialist in that area. But once you become the specialist in whatever area that is, maybe on Linux, you become a specialist on managing a Linux operating system or managing databases on Linux or managing Linux on the network, whatever that happens to be. Once you find that niche that you feel that other people are not properly addressing, now you can use that to leverage yourself into a role where you can get paid a little more because there's not a lot of people out there doing that have that knowledge, and you do. And you can prove it. And you can bring it to a third-party organization, and they will pay you for that. So I think that's a really good place if you're someone who is sort of focusing their efforts on growth in IT and you want to become someone who is able to get a higher salary and is able to ask for that in the world of IT, that's what you do. But there's a couple of things you can do to help yourself. The first is whenever you think about moving up in IT, we often laugh in sort of in jest, laughingly describe this as the 3-year rule. That you stay in an organization for 3 years, at which point you should already be moving out of that organization somewhere else. Now, if you've worked in large companies before, I've worked in multi-billion-dollar companies before, and there are IT positions everywhere doing everything in these companies. The problem is you already work there. And if you wanted to move up into one of those roles, they don't have to be very aggressive with your salary because you already work here. You're already employed here. We don't have to fight for you. You're already here. And so whenever you're within your own organization, you tend to see the ability to move up in your career be limited by salary because they don't have to be aggressive with you. Where are you going to go? You're already here. This is it. So every organization knows at some point that you will be moving to some other company because that's the way it works in IT. If you want to bring in the money, if you really want to make more cash, you almost always have to go to another company. Now, this is a bit of a challenge, of course, because if you've ever been with one company and you quit that job and move to a different company, there's a lot of stress involved there. It's a change. Change is difficult for everybody, for you, for your family, for the company you've left, for the company you're going to. It's all change. And you have to be able to internalize that, recognize it, and make sure that it doesn't become a problem because it could affect you in the role that you're working through. So if you're somebody who is trying to move up in the industry, that move up is also often a move out. Just keep that in mind. It's not always that way. It's almost always that way, as it turns out. I wish it wasn't, but it's almost always that way. Now, there are times when I've run into folks working in this industry. I've met some very, very intelligent, very smart, very sharp people in IT. And in fact, I've met a number of people working in a place and thinking, this guy is brilliant. He could really be making some bank if he just in the same big, large city. If he would walk across the street and go work for that financial company, they'd pay him twice as much. He's working at for a state and local government organization, and state and local government tends to pay less. They get a lot of toys, but they tend to pay less. And I told him, I said, you're very knowledgeable in this. You could probably ask for a good salary if you walked across the street. And he says, yes, I could, but it wouldn't give me the flexibility I have with my schedule that I have here, because I know people that work over there. And in our industry, we talk all the time about people in other places. We know people that work other places. We know how they work. They don't have the same policies for time that we do here. Here I have more flexibility. And because of my family situation, this job is much more valuable to me than getting paid more and working over there. So it's not always about the money. So that is a reality of this. I know we always talk about being coin operated, and we always talk about making more money, and we always talk about moving up and having that larger salary, and it's six figures and all of those things. But there is a balance act. There's a bit of the give and take that you have to think about. What's important for you? And interestingly enough, in some cases, it's not always about the money. There is a balance and things we have to think about there as well. I will also tell you that in our industries, I've already mentioned this, is that we know everybody in the industry. We've either worked with them, or we work with somebody they work with, or we met them at a local trade show, or we know them from the Cisco user group meeting. We meet people and we keep up with what's going on in this industry all the time. And because of that, I think it's super important that you keep track of all of these people you know. And you can, one of the best ways to do that these days is through something like LinkedIn. I mean, I guess you could do it on Facebook, and I guess you could do it on other social media sites, but LinkedIn is specially designed for this. And sort of the rule that I have on my LinkedIn, and I really do appreciate that people would like to join my personal LinkedIn network, but you'll notice of the LinkedIn requests that I get, I never approve any of those. You're only in my LinkedIn network if I have worked with you. That's it. We have had to work together at the same company, or I've had to work with you closely when we worked at other companies to be able to have you on my LinkedIn network, because you want to keep up with where all these people are going. There's constant motion. We're always going back and forth, and we're always looking for good people. And we know people that we've worked with in the past. We know people that we know. We know people who know people we know. And having that network of warm bodies that we are familiar with can either be a great place to pull people into our organization, or sometimes even more importantly, they might reach out to you to pull you into their organization. can be very, very important. That LinkedIn can make the difference between you having a job and not having a job. And it's a very powerful place to be. And I realize if you look at LinkedIn and you get your network going, that your feed on LinkedIn does sometimes tend to be a little saccharine, a little sweet, a little bit too corporate, a little bit, look what I did today. Look how great my company is. Look how we did this and it was fantastic. And it does get a little bit that way sometimes. However, that's not really what LinkedIn's about. LinkedIn is about keeping track of where everyone is. I look at this, a good example of this is when I started working for a startup company. My last big job was with this startup. Nobody ever heard of this company before. They had technology that nobody had ever seen before. And quite frankly, that nobody even believed worked properly. It's a perfect place for me to work. So for some reason, they hired me as a systems engineer. And my job was to explain this technology to other people and help them understand that this was the wave of the future, that this was the next big thing in security. That company was Palo Alto Networks, which now, of course, is a public company. They are a behemoth in security because they have a lot of very smart people running the show over there. Some of the smartest people in technology I'd ever met were the ones running that organization. And they were right. They did create something that nobody else had seen before. They did create technology that nobody believed did what it did. And they did need to, from the ground up, show people this is something you're going to want to do. And in 10 years, everyone will have one of these. And they were right in that particular case. So as we were growing, Palo Alto Networks just blew up. I mean, it started growing very, very rapidly. It was slow starting. We had to kind of explain to people what next generation firewalls did, what they were, and had to prove they did this crazy stuff that we said they did. But we also needed good people. We needed good technical security professionals. I've got a network of those, so I started reaching out to the people that I had in my list. Hey, we're hiring in Chicago. If you ever want to work somewhere crazy, this is as crazy as it gets. Hey, we need somebody in California. Are you still out in California, or did you move somewhere else? We're looking for people there. So I started pulling people in, getting people on board. Let's go. That's where I went to find some of those folks, or to at least reach out and give them a chance. And say, if you want to get on board, now's the time. Pre-IPO, let's go. This will be fun. And it was. It was probably the craziest ride, the craziest story, and the craziest place I ever worked. And it was fabulous. It was tremendous. There's stories I get to take now and tell other people about what we did, what we saw, how this worked, just the overall arc. And then sometimes the day-to-day stories were super interesting. So if you can build that same network where you're not only reaching out for those folks, you are also being called by those folks. Well, how do you build this now? How do you build your LinkedIn if you're just getting started in the industry? You just go start meeting people. Go to a Cisco user group meeting. Go to a Microsoft user group meeting. Go to a Palo Alto Networks user group meeting. Go meet people. Oh, hey, I'm James. Who are you? Where do you work? You work in that big building over there? No kidding. What do you guys do anyway in there? I heard you make widgets. Do you make widgets? You know, you have a whole conversation about the things that people are doing. Well, I'm just trying to get into this industry. Are you guys hiring? So this is the beautiful part of these networks is we can now start using the goals and the policies within our organizations to get you hired. Here's what I mean is that almost every large organization out there has a program where you can be a recruiter for your company. If you know somebody who's smart, you can get their resume and bring their resume to the HR department and say, this is a smart person I know. We really need to hire them. They'll take the resume because you're the one who brought it to them and you already work for the company and they already know you. It gets a little bit higher priority. They reach out to that person. You can get them in for an interview. They might get hired. And if they get hired, you get a finder's fee. employee referral program in almost every company of any size that you go to. So when you start meeting these people at the Cisco user group meeting, they of course want to meet you, but you're also a valuable person to them, a potentially valuable person to them. And they might ask you for your resume before you even have a chance to give it to them. Oh, do you have a resume? I'll hand it in to our folks in HR. We're starting to hire up for people that are in the help desk or the security or the network or whatever it is. They want your resume just as bad as you want to give it to them. So take advantage of that. Make sure that you also are networking with them. And in fact, now you know somebody who works there. And when you go into the interview, you could say, yeah, I know them. I know them from the Cisco user group meeting. We talked all the time about the dogs that they have, that they found at the shelter, that they did the thing. It was a great story. You know, you have these connections with people that you meet wherever you happen to go. Those can be very, very valuable connections from a career perspective, from a financial perspective, or just knowing people in the industry. When you need something, when you need an answer, we need to find something. Hey, has anybody ever seen this? Has anybody ever run into that? Has anybody ever figured out why this problem is occurring? Hey, we installed this Microsoft patch today. Anybody else have a problem? They're already in your network. They're already seeing this. They're already finding it. So yes, there are chances there. There are ways to grow that within the industry. Knowing people, networking, people networking, not bits and bytes networking, not switching routing networking, people networking can be a very, very valuable way to do this. And you can be as extroverted or introverted as you want to be or care to be, but you can still have your LinkedIn and you can still have people add it. And you can even ask people, hey, I'll send you a LinkedIn. They'll go, great. I'll make sure I see it. I see that, I'll prove it. And you can just start building that network up of people that are doing that. Having that connection is a valuable one when you're looking to move up. And for Rolando, who started as an information assurance analyst and doesn't feel like the salary is where they want it to be, there are places to go. There are things you can do, but you need to create a strategy like everything else. Just as you had a strategy to get that first job. Did you talk to somebody? Did you send a resume? Did you see their job posted somewhere? There was something that happened that got you in that chair to begin with. Well, now we need a strategy to get out of that chair and get into the next one. There will be a next one. We often don't think about this, but we need to always be thinking about the next position. I think we often worry about what people want to do 10 years from now. Why are you worrying about 10 years from now? 10 years from now, we won't even know what the industry looks like 10 years from now. I don't have an answer for that one. I don't understand how things will turn out. Things move way too fast in this industry to know what's going to happen 10 years from now. But you should absolutely be thinking about, what's my next step going to be? What's my next level up going to be? Is that going to be more what I'm doing now? Is there something new coming down the line? Maybe suddenly, just maybe, AI is the next big thing. And they're hiring people everywhere for AI. And you need to be an AI expert. And in the industry, and you happen to be in this role of a assurance expert, and you're doing a lot of AI with the things you're doing, now you can take that knowledge and now you're effectively the expert. Other people aren't doing it. You're doing it. So now you can go to a third party and go, I'm an AI expert. They go, great. We're hiring people at 6 figures for this right now. Here's your new job. So that's what you do, is you find that niche that nobody else is covering. And then you're able to position yourself with that additional credentials that will get you the job that you're trying to get to. But you need to have the strategy. It's not going to fall in your lap. It's not going to magically just appear out of the air. Sometimes it does, but very rarely does that happen. My job with Palo Alto Networks appeared, I want to say it appeared out of the air, but it didn't. I heard about that position because someone I had worked with in the past found that position and was being considered for a role in their organization. And they said, do you know anybody who understands this level of detail with the protocols on the network? And he goes, yeah, I know a guy who did nothing but protocols for years. And that's where I met him. He goes, let me call him. I'm driving down the road, not even considering the idea of changing my job. And I got a phone call from him. And he said, I'm looking at this company, Palo Alto Networks. You ever hear from them? And I said, no, that sounds crazy. They named themselves after a city. How good can this be? What did I know? Don't ever ask me for stock advice. They said, and he said, you should interview with these guys. You should see what they're doing. And I said, well, I'm going to an industry trade show next month. Might have even been next week. I'm going to this industry trade show that's coming up. They're going to be there at that industry trade show. I'll just slide by their booth and we'll see what's going on. And I did. I went by their booth and they blew me away. I'm like, is this real? Is this a fake thing? Is it? Nope. This is how it really works. Like, I need to know more about this. And that kind of got me into it. So it's a really good example of these relationships that you garner that were years ago. I had not spoken to this person literally in years. And suddenly seemingly out of the blue, they called me and said, here's a position. And that position completely changed my direction, what I thought I would be doing in the role that I was, what I thought I would be doing for the next 7 years. They completely changed where I was going and what I was doing. All because we had this network and things that we had done together. And he knew me and was able to call and was able to find me and we were able to talk about it. That can happen to you too. But you have to create the foundation, the environment, the network to be able to have that happen. And if you don't create that, you're never going to have that happen. So there are ways to do this. Just make sure you put together what you think your strategy is. There's always new ways to make this happen. There's always new ideas and new concepts and new ways to position yourself, new ways to meet people. Make sure you take advantage of those because you have no idea the person you meet today, how that may affect your career 10 years from now. It may have a very, very dramatic effect on where you go. But it's one of those things about career is you never know where those key moments are until 10 years have gone by, until you've had the career. Then you can look back and go, well, that was critical. That was an important day. That was an important step. That was an important decision, but you have no idea of the scope until you've had the career. So find those people too. Find the people that have had the career. Talk to them about what should I be looking at? I'm at the beginning of my career. What are the things I should keep my eyes open for? What should I be doing now? How should I be positioning myself best to be able to do something 10 years from now? Maybe that's the 10-year question that we should all be thinking about. And you should be thinking about it too. Well, I think that brings us to a very good place to stop our live stream today. I want to thank everyone for being here in our first hour and going through the Q&A, which I think was too easy. We need to take it up a notch, don't we? I'll be working on that. I'm coming for you next month. I'm hoping you show up next month too. We do one of these study groups every month. Make sure you check back with us. The time and dates do sometimes tend to change. So if you want to know when our next live event is going to be, please check our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. I also keep an updated list of our events on our events channel inside of our Discord server, which is where I'm going after this. Come on over to our Discord. It's at professormesser.com/discord, where you will find tons of folks studying for Security Plus, Network Plus, A Plus, and so much more. It's a great group of people there. Some very smart people are there. See what you could do to learn from them and prepare for your certification exams. I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and please consider subscribing to our channel. It really does help us quite a bit. Costs you nothing. And I'd be entirely helpful. If there's anything I can do I'll send you cookies. I'll write you a poem. Won't do any of those things, but I'll think about doing them. We'll really be appreciative if you were able to do that for us. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.